right, well, hopefully this is ready. Hopefully we have audio and visual and all of that good stuff. How's everybody doing? All right. Menno, I'm glad you're able to make it. I hope you had a wonderful time. It sounds like you had a great time yesterday. Shane, welcome back. Just adding some of my oat milk. I don't like oat milk. I don't know. It's got a good texture. And some of that to my still low caffeine drinks. So for those of you that were here yesterday, yeah, I'm not supposed to be having caffeine or should have less caffeine. Doctor's orders. So, hello, Chris. No, we're not getting fancy special effects. My lemon print dress blended into the green screen. You can kind of see the cherry stems doing the same thing, but it's a little bit less noticeable, I think. Why couldn't I have been Lee Cherry or Lee Pomegranate? Why Lee Lemon? And you think it's a green screen. It's not a yellow screen. I know you need yellow to make green, but blue doesn't disappear, right? This is navy blue, so I don't know the rule. I don't make the rules. All right, I just follow them. I hope everybody is doing all right. How are you guys doing? It is nice to have a day off, so that's good. Today is Buddha's birthday, if I remember correctly. Let me double check on that. But it is kind of neat because around cities and stuff, sometimes they put up some decorations for Buddha's birthday, just kind of like you would put holiday decorations around Christmas time. I said Christmas time, not coconut time. Coconut jumped on the coconut. No, please, not again. Hang on, guys. I gotta do this. This cat. This is not okay, sweethearts. You're gonna knock this over. Okay. There's a new ring light. Good morning, Obyang. There's a new ring light, and she's very interested in it, even though it's almost the same as the other one, except the stand is very different. So it can work with my setup, and she's just really into it. She knocked it over yesterday during the live stream too. Jerk. Let's see. Oh, you solved a software bug, Chris. That's good. And those gremlins, they'll get you every time. Yeah, let me double check. Or maybe Obion can tell us about Buddha's birthday. That's today, right? Yeah, it is today. That's what the old calendar says. Hello, Tux. It's yeah, sometimes you get these little like lanterns and stuff. It's kind of cute. There's nothing overt, there's no like nobody's dressed up painted like a Buddha statue waving to children or something, but it is. I guess I don't know. There are more Christmas decorations around than there are Buddha decorations. Maybe. Even these days, Halloween decorations, which of course is wonderful. But it is a little odd because this isn't part of Korean culture. So to see it show up, and in like a really specifically American way, because there's different ways that Halloween is celebrated, of course. For this like very American version, I don't know, but I mean Halloween's fun, right? So who's gonna hate Halloween? Sugar, yes. Salute Krampus and his furry mercenaries. Yesterday, so for those that were in the Patreon stream, do you guys remember that sound that Krampus made? I don't know why. He does this weird, when he's zooming around, he'll make this like, it's almost like a roar. If a cat could roar, like a small, like not one of the big cats, but it's just like a, it's like a weird, it's this weird noise. I've never heard another cat make this noise. I've never heard another Maine Coon make this noise. It's just this weird, I don't know. Like I can imagine a kid that makes noises like vroom vroom as he's, pretending that he's on a motorcycle or something. That's what it seems like Krampus is doing. Today is the holiday by substitute. It is, and so I'm glad that that we're kind of doing that. Where if the holiday, if it's supposed to be like a red day or a bank holiday, if that is falling on a weekend, the government changed it so now the nearby Friday or nearby Monday, that's the day off. So then even if you get, because that always sucks. Like, oh, it's a holiday, but it falls on a weekend, so we don't get a day off. Nope, you still get a day off in Korea, so that's good. Hi, Alex. Welcome. So we are just kind of getting started here. So there was a request for narcissistic personality disorder, and there was somebody had sent something in the Discord about, let's see, about mermaids, technology mermaids, and that was something like about Trump prophets and mermaids and technologically advanced mermaids. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that. Sugar, yes. So the bank holidays, if they fall on a Saturday or Sunday, then we're also given the day off Friday or Monday, not both. You missed yesterday. Yeah, I'm glad you got today's stream. There's a new thing called temple hopping. My mom insisted on visiting 3 different temples. Do they get anything at those temples? Like, do they get a special stamp? Is it a different kind of like snack that they get? Is it a different gift? Do they get different blessings? Do those get added up? My son had a cat he put down on Monday. I'm sorry to hear that. His name was Frog because his meow sounded like a roar or a ribbit. Okay, well, maybe Krampus and Frog have that in common. Krampus is also the box lover. He's in the box right now. I'm worried because that's how it started. He got in the box yesterday, and then he just started going crazy. And I don't know. That's just what it was. Rock in the 40s. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody said something yesterday in the other live stream. Mage said something about the victory rolls. And you know what? It's one of those things. Either your hair's going to cooperate with you or it's not. I'm not going to fight with it. So I just said, all right, we're not doing that. But I had already done the makeup and everything. So it's just pull it back and then roll up the hair in the back, which actually it stayed pretty well because I had to change the dress. So I had to pull it over my head and I thought, oh man, this is coming out. And it was normal, just fine. So, all right. I guess they encourage additional contributions by visiting more temples on Buddha's birthday. Oh, I see. So giving out more tithes. That's it. I used to like seeing Japanese people during holidays. They would go to church on their days, other days Shinto, other days Buddhist temples. They saw no contradiction. Very interesting. I think that is interesting. I mean, we're assuming it's the same group of people. And just somebody from a culture that was invaded by the Catholics, right? It was interesting because the way I describe it to my students is, if I gave you a choice and you only had this choice, you had to eat a bunch of crickets, just a handful of crickets, or you had to eat some crickets crushed into a bunch of your favorite flavor of ice cream. Which would you choose? And you have to choose one of them. The third choice is I kill you. There's no, oh, I don't want to eat it. The third choice is I kill you. All the students say, yeah, I would choose the crickets crushed into the ice cream. Right, because it's easier and it's more palatable to consume a totally new thing that you're not really interested in eating, to eat that in a form that you are interested in eating. And a lot of the times Catholics did that as well. It was like, oh yeah, you have like a god of travel. We have a saint of travel. Oh, you have a god of education. Oh, we have a saint of education. It's the same. And they kind of just would like staple their religious practices on top of it. If you had like alternative things that didn't really mesh well, those were either continued in secret or they just like allowed it. That was the that was the weird thing. So in our case, yeah, we had some ancestral beliefs that just really do not mesh whatsoever with Christianity. And I remember asking my mom about this because the ancestors, these are like the old ancestors. So like if I die, I don't become one of the ancestors. These are like the old people. If you're familiar more with like, I think it might be closer to like Aboriginal Australian dream time. So the gods and the heroes that were in the dream time, those are the people that could qualify as the ancestors, like the firsts. But like the regular people, they're just people. Anyway, so we had these ancestral beliefs, and you really got to be like respectful of the ancestors' stuff. And so my mom would tell me these stories about how she did this thing and it upset the ancestors, and one of them like appeared to her like drooling over her body when she was sleeping as a little kid, and it was really scary and all this stuff. And for me, I was, I don't know, 5, 6 years old at the time. For us, everything was demons, everything was spiritual warfare because of the type of Christian cult we were in. And so anytime anything happened, you know, there was no monsters under the bed, it's demons. Oh, the house is settling. No, it's demons. Oh, don't be worried, it's dark. I know it's scary, but look, if we turn on the light, there's nothing in the closet. Nope, it was demons. Everything is demons that happened, right? So we were always told, just pray, you know, in Jesus' name, I rebuke you, and all these, you know, phrases. And so when my mom was telling me about this really scary encounter she had with the ancestors, I said, well, why didn't you just rebuke it in Jesus' name? Like, just genuinely, you know, why didn't you? And she said, oh, no, you don't do that to the ancestors. And I said, why not? I mean, isn't God stronger than the ancestors? And she's like, it's different. And I was also like, well, why are the ancestors, like, aren't they our ancestors? Why are they so mean to us? You know, is that the devil? It's not the devil. It's different. It's totally different. Don't ever say that. Okay. You know, and as a child, you just kind of accept that this is something that you just don't get, and the adults get it. So there must be some kind of logic to it. No, there's not. And other people that are from similar cultures that have had like a similar interaction, yeah, it's always the same. That's it. So I don't know. Catholics are just okay with that, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why. Like I said, I think it's just it was easier to get people to believe in their religion. Sugar says today's style reminds me of the wife of a mobster. I have no idea what my husband does. I'm just an ignorant housewife. You're like, is that the feel that we're going for? I don't know. He just shows up. We got some money sometimes. He says he does a job. I don't ask. Okay. I got a nice new coat. I don't ask. I mean, that's what a husband's supposed to do. He's supposed to take care of his wife. And that's what he's doing. Why should I bother him? Is that the look you're going for, Sugar? Is that the concept there? Yes, hence Santeria or Voodoo mixed with Catholicism. Absolutely. We just talked about that because we talked about Haiti and the Haitian Revolution. And I was explaining that to the students, like the importance of voodoo in like how it inspired the Haitian Revolution, and like a way that the slave owners could not take this away from them, but also just how it really meshed with Catholicism. Yeah. Let's see. Obiang wants the original flavor. I totally forgot what we were talking about. What is the original flavor? The dude says, I've recently decided that I'm an anarchist in the same way that I'm atheist. It's all power structures created by people to have power. Can you elaborate? That's interesting. Shane says it's like asking someone about a poorly constructed fantasy lore, but they're a diehard fan and not willing to tolerate plot holes being pointed out. What is it? Midichlorians? Is that what it was? I grew up Catholic, and with Catholic and spiritualist people, it was where, see, again, I would love to hear it. I feel like there would be a lot of overlap. Staten Island called, they want you back. Thank you. All right, you're focused here, watching an episode of a series, now a bit of Lemon. Which series were you watching? I thought your hair reminded me a bit of Scarlett O'Hara, but what did he say? I'm sorry, my dear, I don't give a damn. But her hair, I think, wasn't it more flowing? I think that was the thing. New territory for me. I usually do the anti-flurfer feeds on Sundays. Well, thank you for making an exception, Brian. You know, if let's go ahead and get into one of the things I wanted to talk about, just because it's very bizarre, and if you're into flurfer stuff, I thought maybe you might like this bizarreness. All right. Let me go ahead and open this in a different window. Here's our window. Gotta make this adjustment. Amanda Grace. There she is. Amanda Grace. So we have to be very careful with this. I have no idea how other YouTubers do it. They're always able to play clips from videos and stuff, and every time I do that, I end up getting flagged. My stream gets interrupted. So we're gonna not do that. But thankfully she talks, or sorry, she has as she's talking, there's a I guess subtitles is what you would call it. Yeah. Yeah. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. That's what it was. You were talking about the bugs and ice cream flavor. I'd rather have the bug flavor. Well, yes, that's a good flavor. But these are for students that are very squeamish. I brought them cricket chips. They were called Chirps chips. You can find them like on Amazon or something, and they're good, but most of the students were too scared to try it. They basically, there was a handful of students that would try it, and then the other students just said, "How is it?" And they said, "It's fine. It tastes really good. It tastes just like a normal, chip." And the other students were like, "Okay." They didn't do that, And I told them it's fine to spit it out. Like I'm not offended if you don't like it, It's not rude to not like it, but for somebody to go out of their way and purchase enough for all of their classes of a product that isn't sold in Korea, so it had to be imported, it had to be, scheduled to be here at the same time as we had this class and stuff. I'm not offended that you guys aren't eating it. I don't think it's necessarily rude, but a person might. There's nothing wrong with tasting it and not liking it, but if you just refuse to taste it, what if it's really good? What if you love it? What if it's one of your favorite things and you'll love it forever and it's like your favorite go-to snack in the future? You'll never know. All right. So this is Amanda Grace, and they limit the clip to 30-second intervals with commentary that's fair use. It's challengeable as long as there's no music playing in it. You know what, Brian? That's what we were doing, though. We would watch, like we had no sound, and we watched a little bit of it. We're talking over it the whole time. We're doing this, and then we're taking these pauses. And as we were doing that, it ended up just like we weren't just sitting and watching it, So that was very frustrating. It seems to work better if I just don't play it at all. That's it. Let's see. Sparrow Drone says, I would respond to the anarchist position by noting that the purpose of government is not to have power, but to provide protection. Power comes from the nation. That's true. You need to get it under review. Oh, no. It comes back. It's just it interrupts the stream. It doesn't stop the stream. It doesn't cease it. It temporarily stops the stream. And then after about, 3 or 4 minutes, it comes back on. And that's where, like, again, I've never seen other YouTubers have a stream and then suddenly they lose all audio and video feed, So it's annoying, yeah. But thank you for your feedback. All right, so she's gonna pray. She does this prayer of, I don't know. We got through this a bit, and basically her whole thing was that she had a vision. And this is about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson lost his job on Fox News because of certain things that he knowingly lied about that contributed to a lot of mass panic and angry frustration in the public. It was basically to stir the pot and get ratings as opposed to being a journalist, you know. Um, and so he was fired, but before he was fired, she had apparently hinted at, oh, there's something that's going to happen. I had a prophetic dream, but I'm not going to tell you. And then after he got fired, now she's telling us this dream. And in the dream, she's in this like this area. There's some kind of it was a Christian gathering. I forget what it was called, Loudmouth or something. It was a lot of Christians coming together as an event. So it wasn't like a church event, but it was a regional Christian event. So she was there and she sees Tucker Carlson in the dream, and he's raising his hands up. And as he does that, his whole shirt kind of lifts, and she can see a mermaid tattoo wrapped around his body. And she says that mermaids, what was it? What did she say about mermaids? It was such a weird, here we go, wrapped around the entire trunk of his body. And then she's taken backstage. And so she says, all right, mermaids signify seducing spirits. They signify going back to the Philistines. We have to do this like short clip of playing here with Dagon. And that's not like where... Do you guys remember that in the Bible when Goliath was a merman and he seduced people? Can you just imagine? Can you imagine David walks up and there's like a moat around around the city. There's just a whole moat, and that's where Goliath swims around. And then David walks up and he's like, hey, we're not going to take it anymore. And Goliath swims up out of the, sorry, I hit the mic. Swims up out of the moat and like arrests his human half. And he's like, so David, do you come here often? Yeah. Yeah, the Philistines, back in the Philistines when we had all those mermaids and seducing mermaids. Not as bad as Cat Curry. Yeah, we're not striking and striking yet. Okay, but that's where we're going. So then she starts talking about. Then she saw a beautiful black woman, and the woman was wearing a beautiful ruffled dress. And she said, "Oh, where did you get that dress? It's very beautiful." This is in the dream. And she said, the woman replied, "Oh, it's couture," and this means that in the Met Gala, that the Met Gala was a cover for all of the powers that be to get together and decide which of the totally awesome, wonderful Christian men they're going to target and remove from power. You know, like, so there's two ways you could think about dreams. One of them, like the way that she was talking about some dream that she had about Tucker Carlson, I feel like this had to do with Tucker Carlson talking about the Little Mermaid, and also Tucker Carlson just talking or something. And since she's very focused on it, maybe she fell asleep while he was on. That ends up in the dream. The other things with dreams is they can be ways for your brain to kind of organize its thoughts through the day. And there's some interesting research on dreams and what that means. There's like out of all the ridiculous stuff that Freud did, one of the things was psychoanalysis, and psychoanalyzing is good, and you can use dreams to kind of get like a different way to look at somebody. So that doesn't mean that a dream tells you exactly what's going on in somebody's mind, but it can be a place to start. So if somebody tells you about how they had a dream where they are talking in a crowd, but everyone was ignoring them, and as they tried to get louder, they got smaller. Let's say that happened. And then at the end of the dream, they were the same size as a mouse, and they had to run around trying to avoid people's footsteps because nobody saw them. If they had a dream like that, you could ask them, well, do you feel ignored? Do you feel like other people don't take you seriously, or that people are not considering you as like an equal? That might be a good place to start, right? And so in some of these cases, I think that when people are talking about their prophetic dreams, they don't realize how much they're telling about themselves. And so as we were going through this during the Patreon stream, I thought, you know what, we should watch the rest of this here. So now you guys are kind of caught up. Um, so yeah, here's the part where it's couture, and let's see. She says she wants, all right, so here's, okay. This is where we haven't, all right. I believe there's an assignment that's gone out against him. This is like from the devil or from the powers that be. They've made like a conspiracy plan and assignment. So against Glenn Beck, because he seems certain things they don't want him to see, especially in the arena of artificial intelligence. Because one thing about this, and we'll get into how technologically advanced this part of the spiritual realm is. Oh, the spiritual realm is technologically advanced. I see. Is that something any of you have thought about? So let's ask a question. Spiritual realm technology. Let's see, makes perfect sense. Excuse me, what? So that is your poll if you guys want to add here, because that is, what? What kind of spirit technology would exist? That's my question. What kind of spirit technology would even exist? Is there like a spirit version of a computer? Because we had this version of the internet. It's a secret internet used by the military. This isn't like secret information, but if I told you what was on it, it is secret information. But we had, it's called the SIPRNet. So it's like the military's secret internet where they could share information. And it was interesting stuff. It was like, if you use the SIPRNet and you went to a news website, then all of the journalists that had security clearances, this is where they publish their work. So you would look at it on the regular internet and you would see just regular journalist stuff. And then on the SIPRNet, if you go to the same website, it's just all different articles written by people that have this security clearance. So it's very interesting. Pretty cool stuff. Is that what this is? Like, is there like a spirit Google? Like a Google, like a spirit Tinder, spirit Grinder? What is this? Literally the ghost in the machine. That's it. Let's see what you guys are saying here. The idea that we should be led by special people is how the current view most forms the government, and for sure how we view the world constructed by religious thought. I'd agree with that, but I would also agree like it's a job for, at least it should be. I know that in places like the US, anybody can be a politician. But in other cases, it's usually somebody who's qualified. So instead of you having to figure out all of the different best ways to form an education curriculum, you have somebody that's worked in this for a while, they've studied childhood development and that kind of thing. Let's see. Dreams are like drug hallucinations. They can only look inward. That's a good comparison, I think. I must be a prophet. Must I? Or must they? AI at present isn't even AI, it's just probability engines. Yeah, but they don't see it that way. They see this as like the devil creating like a bizarro human. This alternative intelligence rivaling God's perfect creation. That's what they think. I was tempted to say it makes perfect sense just to be sarcastic. Thank you, Alex. Let's see. Duder says, I'm a machinist and all the ghost shows never calibrate their equipment. It's mind-numbing. That's true. It's just like they turn it on and suddenly... Technologically advanced spirits. Nope, it's demons. Exactly. That's it. It's just all demons. I'm trying to think, like, is this something... Because remember, I used to be in this kind of thing, where I think the past, like the 90s equivalent or the 80s equivalent to this would have been Rainbow Bright is secretly sending messages, like occult symbols this, and the Smurfs have occult symbols that. And it was all this occult stuff as if children are totally swayed by these occult symbols, you know. But to them, these symbols have power, and that's why they're there. And the more you see them, the more you're influenced by them. I think this is the modern equivalent of that. That everything, oh, it's a technology I don't understand. It's a thing I don't understand. It's Satan, you know, to channel the church lady. Could it be Satan? That's all this is, you know, and that's why I think she was such a good parody. Um, who did that? Was it Dana Carvey? Was that his name? Yeah, just absolutely ridiculous. Ghost in the Machine meets Christ and is converted to Islamic thought, and I'm sure we'll have somebody saying, you know, in the Quran, it's predicted. The Quran is not a book of science; it's a book of miracles. But there are scientific things in the Quran, and because no one should know it, it is a miracle. every time you talk to a Muslim, that is it. Spirit Grinder is my favorite Christian rock band. I feel like that would be like a song by Ghost. If it's perfect, where's the threat factor coming from? Right, that's the thing. You know, it's constantly that question. If the devil is plotting against God's perfect plan, can't God just stop it? Let's see what else she says. So he's seeing a lot of things. This is Glenn Beck connecting the things. Okay, so this is something we can see. We're 17 minutes in. We were watching this mostly yesterday on the Patreon live stream. And occasionally, I've noticed this, occasionally we'll get these weird background images. We have no idea who chose them, and why some of them are in Arabic. Now, I'm not sure if this is a Quran, but I think it is. It could just be an Arabic Bible. But it's, why? Why? Like, what's the point? So anyway, they're connecting dots, which is what she said in the very, very beginning of this, that it's all connect the dots. Yeah, it's like a conspiracy mindset. Yeah, because conspiracy theories are, let's see, what do we got? We've got 7% of you said that the spiritual realm technology makes perfect sense. If 7% of you drunk and you misclicked. But yeah, she's just connecting the dots. And so this goes back to that conspiracy mindset kind of video that I mentioned, or that I made, but just to summarize that video very quickly, there are some people that are prone to seeing connections and things that don't exist, especially in cases where they feel a low level of self-efficacy. So it's kind of a way to explain why this stuff is happening, and I don't like it, but I can't control it. Yeah. Let's see. Is anyone here a fan of Tucker Carlson? No. And I feel like that name could be turned into a drag name very easily, like Tucker Dixon or something. Dixon. I think that would work. I think Tucker Dixon should be. That's good, right? just right there, right? That's good for giving it 2 seconds of thought. Tucker Dixon should probably, go into drag. You know, it might make him more. It might improve his like outlook on life. Okay. Replace the T with an N. No, I think Tucker Dixon makes perfect sense. Yeah, the new spokesman for Target. Exactly. Which, by the way, I saw that tucking, what is it? The Target tucking swimsuit? Is that it? Tuck-friendly swimsuits. I want to show it to you. Because if you haven't seen it, I want to show it to you. Yeah. All right. There it is. So it's supposed to be tuck friendly. And it's, I don't know, it's just ugly. That's my problem with it. It's just not a nice, like maybe this one's okay. The one that's the two-piece. But I did see an interesting comment on what's it called? Twitter, which was saying, you know, women have been complaining forever that the uh, the crotch portion was getting smaller and smaller. So it's very uncomfortable and it's very easy to have a wardrobe malfunction. And yet the swimsuit companies weren't paying attention. But as soon as somebody with a penis needs a swimsuit, oh, now we can have extra fabric. So I thought, I don't know. I mean, you could have always purchased larger swimsuits, but this is the kind of thing it's kind of turning into. It's like people feel targeted in ways that it's totally unintended, and I don't know. But it's just an ugly swimsuit. Who chose those colors? It reminds me of I don't know. But I guess, yeah, isn't the 90s coming back anyway? I don't know. It's just an ugly swimsuit. Both of them are pretty ugly, I gotta say. I'm just not into this. These are, like, the bottom one looks... Who designed this? I don't know. They're just ugly. Okay? You're transgender. You're not, like, fashionless. Who designed this for you? That's why they should be taken off the shelves. Yeah, they don't look good. It's just like, here, what pieces do we have lying around? Can we, like, I don't know, expand the crotch? We can? Okay, great. Well, let's just label it's for tucking and say that we're, trans friendly or something. No, make a nice swimsuit. Drag queens figure it out. You can figure out Target. I would like to see you and James Apperson stream together. Yeah, let him know, that I'm available for sure. Who's Tucker Dixon? I'm in and out of the stream. Oh, so Tucker Dixon is my drag name for Tucker Carlson. I'm recommending that Tucker Carlson has a drag name as Tucker Dixon, and that would improve his outlook on life. 90s for sure. Gotti, yeah. I don't know. Who did that? That's the hate crime. I'm sorry. That's a bad joke. All right. So these ideas that they don't want out there. It's always the they, right? It's a nebulous they. So pray for him. All right, so we should pray for Glenn Beck. What are we praying? I guess we're praying to Allah. So we're asking Allah to please let Glenn Beck avoid all the pork that's coming his way. I mean, well, what are we praying for? It's so vague, Praying for what? All right, she's going to go back to June 5th, 2020 for a moment because this all connects. I'm glad that your dream from 2023 connects prophetically to 2020. I'm so glad. So she had, I guess, another dream, I'm assuming, had just awoken to have my time with the Lord, start my day with him. And when I sat up in bed, I was awake, but my eyes were closed, and I saw arise in the realm of the spirit 2 serpents who were facing each other. Suddenly, out of the 2, a multitude arose, all intertwined together in this tangled, intertwined cloud-like formation. Then appeared within this intertwined formation a face. The face came forth into the center. It was an incredibly wicked face. Suddenly, it began to move. The face with all the serpents around it. Girl, what were you on? Right? If you sit up and you're just like awake, but your eyes are still closed, which I don't do that. Maybe other people do. I don't do that. So she's awake and her eyes are closed. And before she's going to open her eyes to the day, she starts envisioning just a mass of freaking snakes just swirling and writhing and turning into like an evil face and then like swirling around again. That's horrifying. I would be like, whoa, maybe I'm still asleep. Whoa, that was weird. I'll make a note of it, see if something like that happens again. Kind of backtrack, like, what did I eat? Did somebody do something? Somebody spike something? And then move on. I wouldn't think, you know what? I'm a prophet. This is prophetic. I would just never think that. Hello, Test. Hello, Salem. Increase his emergency food supply sales. That's what he sells, right? He sells those emergency food things. I'm a live and let live type. Why oppress someone for not being you? I don't get it. No matter what you think God is, it doesn't track. That's the thing, is that, it's It's not your job, right? It's not your job. It might be, you feel it might be your job to preach the gospel to every creature, okay, but it's not your job to police how other people behave. That's not it. Um, isn't your God strong enough to do it himself? And it's the same question I have for Muslims. They're very sensitive about any negative, or not even negative, it's just like a critical question. Well, if it says this in part of the Quran, but then it says this in part of the Quran, isn't that a contradiction? And they're very offended by this. Um, and they say, well, how would you feel if somebody offended your mother and blah, blah, blah? I'd say, well, I wouldn't kill them. I wouldn't, I'd ask my mom to defend herself. If this was something that I thought would bother her deeply, I wouldn't say anything to her. I wouldn't associate with those people or whatever. Um, can't God defend himself? Why does he need you to murder people and legislate against them? That doesn't make sense. Change the stream name to former Fox host is a drag queen named Tucker Dixon ? And watch a lot of people join for the fun chaos. Should we do it? Should we just is that clickbait? Because I know there's like, you can get flagged for clickbait. My mother is tangible. The blasphemy is, I think it's just funny to like make fun of Zeus and stuff too for being like he just did everything, everything on two legs or not even. And it's funny because it's like they're the gods, but they act so stupid, and that's why it's funny to have or like little comics, like 4-panel comics, making fun of Spider-Man, making fun of Batman. They're supposed to be so powerful, and here we are making fun of them like they're regular people, they're regular losers like us. I think it's the same concept to make fun of a god. Hey Bree, how you doing? Bzz, bzz, bzz. I was gonna say hey B. That's not it. Yeah, can God microwave a burrito so hot he can't eat it? Every time I hear that, I always chuckle a bit because I think of somebody just really, really just on something, and then just suddenly somebody's preaching at that person because they're talking about how God can do everything. He's all powerful and whatever. And then the guy would be like, whoa, wait a minute. You telling me, could God like, you could just see the wheels turn in his head, and then just the evangelist saying, all right, I'll pray for you, and then walk away. So nice to be on James with you and Mike. I think you guys are talking to each other, which is awesome. And yeah, it's great to be around here with so many extra people. It's awesome. All right. However, they're connected to this face. We're still talking about the snake face, this face entities. So many serpents, one head. I'm not sure when it began to move. See, again, what is this background? It's like a very bright, beautiful background. A girl is like praying or studying her Bible. I don't know. I'm not sure it knew initially that I had spotted it, but I believe this in itself was prophetic. Here's a statue of the Virgin Mary for some reason. Prophetic in nature because it was on the move. So the snakes as a face, tangled. Does she understand that when snakes like have sex, they get into a tangled mess? Has she been watching just like a lot of those snake documentaries? Is this something she's been watching? She just, you guys have seen that, right? The snake doing it ball. Let me show you. It's because it's funny. Let's see what we got for YouTube. Snakes mating ball. Yeah. Okay. Anaconda breeding ball. All right, so we'll have to show you this. It's just so weird, right? So they're like, oh, I'm smelling things, and I smell pheromones. Let's do it. And then they're just, this is not what I wanted. I wanted like a garter snake. Those are funny. All right. This is what I feel like she must have been watching. Okay, so they're talking about it. All right, here we go. There it is. They're all just getting together. And this is it. This is them doing it. It's just a huge orgy of snakes. Look at they're just everywhere. They're in the trees. They're in the grass. They're on the moss. They're on the rocks. Like, this is what I feel like she was watching, and then she went to bed. Which, I mean, it's fine. It's educational. As long as she's watching it educationally, it's fine, you know? But then again, what is, so it's moving, therefore it's prophetic. I don't get that, right? I don't get that. Tess says, I remember evangelical preachers praying with the hand on my forehead. I swear he was trying to push me over backwards. He was. So my grandmother was Catholic, and she had a knee replacement, but the knee replacement didn't take, and it was slowly becoming gangrene, and it was just difficult for her, difficult for us, because we were taking care of her. So my mother, being a Pentecostal, takes her to a Benny Hinn revival. So we go to this revival, and I remember two things very distinctly. One of them was it was very hot outside while we were waiting to get in, and then my mom started yelling, Lord, give us wind, Lord, give us wind, and like raising her hands. And so a bunch of people said it, and then eventually wind happened, and they were all like screaming and rejoicing because their prayer was answered. And me, again, I was young, I was maybe 7, maybe 8. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And then we get in, and Grandma gets to be on stage. And so she's, you know, she's not very ambulatory. She needs a wheelchair, but she can stand up and kind of stumble a bit. And so this was really the part that my mom didn't realize, but wow, it stuck with me. So Grandma is Catholic. They don't do these revivals, touch on the head, and you collapse and fall over. They don't do that. And so Benny Hinn is praying, and then he presses her and pushes her on the forehead, and she stumbles backwards. And she kind of like looked at him, kind of like, what are you doing? And he goes up to her again, he presses and he shoves, and she stumbles again. And he tries it a third time, and then she doesn't fall over, and so they just took her off stage. And I asked my mom, like, Mom, how come Grandma didn't fall down? Like, does God not love her? Is he not going to cure her? And she said, Grandma did not fall down because Grandma didn't know she was supposed to fall down. And this to her was just a very, you know, matter-of-fact kind of thing. She never really put any thought into saying this. But for me, it was just, oh, okay. And it really, I guess, to use the Christian phrasing, it planted a seed, definitely. And so later on now, you know, studying psychology, oh, okay, a lot of this makes sense. Yeah, your mom's really into Benny Hinn, no. Yeah, and then wind happened. I mean, what else can you say other than wind happened? You know, we're in an area, temperature fluctuations exist. Wind is a byproduct of temperature fluctuations. I mean, how can we say it came from God? Yes, it's called slain in the spirit. Exactly. That's the phrasing they use. And for those that don't know slain in the spirit, it's the idea that you're so overcome by being filled with the Holy Spirit that you can no longer stand and you just fall over, but you don't get hurt. So it's that kind of thing. Thinking about what you think can be a blessing or a curse, right? Psychology is also pretty science light. I'm not sure what you mean by science light. If you can explain, then we can talk about that. Dexterity and flexibility are certainly an advantageous thing. Oh, for sure. National Geographic's Prophetic Edition. Yeah, that's what we're watching here. This is it. All right, so I asked the Lord in Jesus' name, to loose and release his holy warring angels and his host of heaven of all rankings and divisions. For those of you that don't know, there's like the angels are like a military. So there's like ranks of them and they have different jobs. But you know what? Why does God need your permission or your beseeching? That's always my question. And that was really where I was around, I guess, 16. And this is when I really got disenchanted with our church. This idea that we need a person who can speak in tongues. Like, can't we just do it by ourselves? Now, to be fair, you know, I'm naturally very introverted. So for me to have to keep going to a place that's full of people, I didn't really see like a big benefit. I didn't have a lot of friends in church. I didn't hate the church. The church people were very friendly, but I didn't go there to fellowship, and that's one of the benefits of a church or mosque, etc., is the fellowship, and I just never did. It just wasn't for me, and I always wondered, like, why do I, like, I'm sitting here having my own spiritual experience. Why do I have to get that interrupted by somebody who wants to loudly shout in tongues and then somebody else who has to loudly interpret what they're saying? Like, I'm over here having my own thing. Like, why? Who cares? Oh, and all you're going to say is, I am God. I am the Lord. I am he who was there, the Alpha and Omega. And these people, you are my people. That it was always the same translation. It was always very generic, and I felt different too, because I was like, oh, I think that the person speaking in tongues is saying this, and then the translation would be something super generic. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. So I started getting really against this idea that I needed somebody else to channel the Holy Spirit into me. It didn't make sense. Like, if God is everywhere and we can access God and God's a personal savior and Jesus is my personal Christ and all this other stuff, what sense does it make that I have to go ask somebody else to ask God to fill me with the Holy Spirit? It didn't make sense anymore. And I really started to be like, oh, okay, I'm non-denominational, but I'll still go to the same church because it's just what I'm comfortable with. I just liked the style. I liked the idea that if I wanted to be quiet, I could be quiet. If I wanted to be loud, I could be loud. I was on the worship team. I played the bass. So I was already established at the church, but I started to identify more as non-denominational because I just didn't, because of what it says in 1 Corinthians 1:10. Be ye of all one mind, and let there be no divisions among you. And so this idea that we need her to ask us to pray for Glenn Beck so that way God will bless Glenn Beck and do his will in his life. Why? Who am I to God that he's going to listen to me about Glenn Beck? Who is she that she's going to beg God to release his spiritual army? It doesn't make any sense. The science behind most current health science is based too much on self-reported studies. It's like diagnosing car repairs without lifting the hood. Oh, okay. So I see what you're saying. The Duder, and then also Brian, the lacking hard facts. I would say that's the common perception about psychology, because what psychology has to do, the problem, I would say maybe the problem with psychology is that there is a social component to it. It's how you're raised, it's how you're receiving outside feedback, the type of culture you're in, etc. And so some of the stuff that made sense, like Ash's study of conformity, or the Milgram experiment, these were experiments that basically were saying people will listen to authority, or people will go with the majority even when they feel uncomfortable, or when they know the majority is wrong, they'll still kind of default to what the majority says. This made sense in the 50s. This is the 1950s. It's during the start of the Cold War. We're in the McCarthy era. Where we have the fear of the communists and all this other stuff. You got to prove you're a true American, this, that, and the other thing, right? If you're not with us, you're against us, that kind of thing. And that came with a really negative social repercussion. If you go against the majority, they could label you a communist, you lose jobs, you lose everything. So you wanted to be part of the majority. That doesn't work as well today. The other thing is that they had to only do it in men. When you do the study in women, there are different results because of that dynamic that women have socially that men don't. And so I think one of the problems with psychology is that we can never get complacent. We can never say, well, we had this study in the past, it still works today. It may not. And so they constantly have to keep getting tested. And so this is where I kind of think psychology, when we say a theory in psychology, I had a hard time figuring out what that meant, because it's not a theory like a guess, like in everyday English, like speech, but it's also not a theory like in the other sciences, right? It's where, like, if we have the theory of gravity, we don't have to keep testing in 10 years in another country, does gravity still work here? We don't have to test that. So the theory kind of shows up as something that this makes sense right now, but later on we have to test it again. And then with neuroscience, with our ability to look into the brain, this has really helped out. So this kind of adds that hard science, quote unquote, weight to it. So when we talk about stuff like narcissistic personality, because somebody wanted to go over that, so I was doing some extra reading on it. There's like, we can see the difference in the brain. We can see the difference in like the size of certain parts of the brain. We can see parts that are associated with one thing, like empathy, for example, and how it looks in a scan. We can see the differences between a brain that has persistent depressive disorder versus a brain that doesn't. So I think that's been really helpful. So it's kind of helping us put that together. Same thing with like genetics, epigenetics. These are things that, back in the 50s, back in the 40s, we just did not have access to. So yeah, it's definitely helpful. And then saying that modern psychology is based on what it means to be a good person today. Maybe you are ADHD today. We had goats to keep all day making fences. And so what you're talking about would fall under evolutionary psychology. And so these are things that there's a reason we have this. Like, a really good example that's used a lot, even for like in atheist circles, is that idea of, if I see a bush move, if I assume there's an agent there, like a lion, and I run away so I don't die, then I don't die. If I was wrong and it was just the wind and I ran away, I'm still alive. But if I don't assume an agent and it is a lion, then I die. If I don't assume an agent and it is the wind, then I don't die. So the people that are less likely to assume an agent, these are the people that are more likely to die and get their genetics kind of removed from the pool, right? So you end up in a situation where we're safe today, but we still have this fear. You know what I mean? And then this is what we end up with. This woman that we're watching, Amanda Grace, this is the kind of stuff. So she is seeing the bush shaking and putting together a bunch of ideas. So this idea of like conspiracy mindset in these cases, we can see where it came from, but how, what can we do about it today? Because today it's causing a problem. And that's where really we differentiate between something like you are anxious versus you live with anxiety, and so this is how we differentiate it. Is the situation calling for this response? Like if somebody you love got into a horrible car accident and you're waiting and you're told there's a 10% chance this surgery is going to save their life, a 90% chance they're going to die on the table, you're going to feel quite anxious. And that's an appropriate response to that stimulus. But when you have an inappropriate response, the anxiety response to something like opening the door to go outside, something like that, this is where it turns into, a problem. And then if it starts negatively affecting your life, like you can't leave the house to take out the trash, and so you're living with trash in your house, and this is having a negative impact on your health and stuff, this is when it becomes a disorder. So there's levels of it, and I think that's where the misconception is, because I think there has been, to some extent, a lot of these terms thrown around, and a lot of self-diagnosis, which people don't usually admit to doing. So it appears like ADHD or autism or something is really, really common when it may not be as common, right? And I think it's because just this idea that, I read some of the DSM symptoms, I identify with that, what does that mean? And there is, some dispute too, because if I have an issue, like if I'm trying to diagnose you, right, if I'm doing clinical psychology and I'm looking at the DSM, one of the criteria might be something like excessive worry. What is excessive? What if I have anxiety disorder as your doctor? And to me, yeah, you know, that does sound pretty reasonable. You know what I mean? You know, so this is where that problem kind of comes in. The other problem that and the reason I'm going into research and not clinical is that I think we're still missing out on some stuff. Like the idea about the diagnosis for PTSD did not exist until I think it was the 70s, 80s, something like that. It was after Vietnam. And so when a person like would report that they were having hallucinations about, because maybe they had to burn down a village and a bunch of kids were on fire and screaming, and so when their son, their infant son is screaming, they suddenly were transported back to that situation. The only thing they could have been diagnosed with was psychosis, because they're having hallucinations for no reason and they're smelling things. They're having, you know, what is it? Olfactory hallucinations, right? And so they're having all these hallucinations. And this is why I think the research is important, to kind of really differentiate this stuff. And I want to really do this for veterans, because this is when I noticed a really big problem. A lot of us get diagnosed with anxiety disorder, but we feel like we don't meet the criteria for anxiety disorder. And it's similar with firefighters, paramedics, and police officers. And I think it has to do with adrenaline overload. And it just kind of, that's where I think. And this idea came from a doctor of mine who worked at the VA. And I would agree with him with that. So that's something I want to test, to create something that's like veteran anxiety or something along those lines, so like really differentiated. And there's something I want to do with trans as well, but I feel like it's one of those things you can't talk about openly because you don't want to get canceled. But I think that if we really narrow these things down, that can be very helpful. Yeah. But then the problem is, all right, so then what? You know, we narrowed it down, so what? And then the hope would be to provide better treatment. You know, it's the same with differentiating between different types of diabetes. It's necessary because we need to provide different kinds of medication, you know, different treatment. So I think that's, yeah, that's my tangent. Yeah. So as I was talking through this, you guys were saying, let's see, are you still pursuing your master's degree, or did you finish? I should be done in January, I think it is. Tess says, when I was a kid, slaying in the spirit and speaking in tongues were scary as hell. To me, I thought they were like beautiful ways for God to connect to us. Like I had no, I'm so tired of Christians who assume, oh, you became atheist because you hated your church, and, you know, I'm sorry for what they did to you. They start off with that. And I always tell them, no, I loved my church. I thought it was great. I thought my experience was great. I had no problems with it. The only problem came when I was thinking about it. Yeah. Let's see. All her angels are Q level. Exactly. That's it. Let's see. Non-denominational, aka evangelical. Yeah, I guess it would. Yeah. I played bass, the Great Dragon. I haven't played in a long time. I played the bass, I played bassoon, the sousaphone, clarinet, flute, saxophone, piano, trombone, baritone, a bunch of other stuff. The Pentecostal and Assemblies of God are big on slaying in the spirit and speaking in tongues. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The scientific theory is the highest level of confidence we can have, which is true, and that's why I try to say, like, I wish there were different words for it, because just as a teacher, having to teach the students about like the theory of evolution or germ theory or something like that, I have to keep reminding them there's a difference, and I'm sorry that it's the same word in English. I'm really sorry. Even when I'm trying to explain it to people who don't understand evolution, like on Twitter, I say the same thing. I understand this sucks that it's the same word, because it has a totally different meaning. Yeah. Also, modern psychology is based on what it means. Okay, I read that already. Let's see. Empirical evidence is always preferred over anecdotal evidence. Yes, which is why case studies are so, they're interesting, but they're just sort of, okay, now what can we do? Something like a case study could provide someone, especially who doesn't suffer through something. Like, let's say you did a case study on somebody who has anorexia nervosa and you do not. This could give you some ideas on, all right, what could we test for? You know, this person is talking about this. If we assume this is indicative of the disorder, what is a test that we can do to determine whether that question is true? I think the hardest part, but the most interesting part about psychology is it's constantly asking questions. Like, if you cannot stagnate with psychology, you just can't. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. Yeah. The conspiracy-minded folks got it all correct, though. You're telling me that Tucker Carlson is being seduced by celestial mermaids that have spirit technology? That's what you're saying, Tom? She's making up the bush and the wind shaking in the line. Yeah, possibly. Dude, sorry for getting political. I don't, no apologies, not at all. If I didn't want to talk about it, then I would say, oh, that's cool, but, you know, find another channel. Because I have said that before. Some people talk about some things like philosophy. And I don't know, I was into philosophy when I was a lot younger. But overall, I feel like there's a couple philosophical concepts that we kind of have to have just working definitions and then move on. If we want to have a discussion for something that can directly apply to helping people right this second, like empiricism, you know, do we have an idea of what can we trust for reliable facts? And we just say, okay, it's got to be something that we can at least replicate. All right, that's where we're going. Okay, let's build a study and go. So I don't get too much into that. And so if somebody brings up a lot of philosophical concepts, I just say I'm not well versed in it. I would recommend somebody else's channel. Yeah. I think I mixed up 2 live streams. No, it's totally fine. An elementary exposition on the theory of pony dynamics. I'm glad you enjoy this. Test. Conspiracy implies other people. It does, Tom, but you have to remember that in this case, for this person that we're talking about, this type of person we're talking about, not only are other people implied, but so are demons and the devil himself. That's the thing. And this is where it starts. It starts with Satan, and then it goes to demons, and those demons possess humans. This is where they're starting. That's the worldview this is, and I used to have this worldview, so I'm familiar with it. Yeah, that's why she's asking for a loosing of warring angels as opposed to writing to a senator or something, or getting a good asking for donations to afford a good lawyer to help out Glenn Beck to make sure that all of his ducks are in a row, and that hey, I think that people are going to accuse him of this. Can you make sure he's protected against it? She's not doing that. She's not doing anything to physically help Glenn Beck's life. She's asking God to release angels because she saw a bunch of snakes while she was waking up. That's not a conspiracy. Like that is, I mean, that's not including other people. You know, it's very different, very different. So we're holy warring angels, hosts of heaven of all rankings and divisions, to confuse, block the plot scheme and the contract assignment attempt, counter-offensive of the enemy, and what has been released in this hour. After the Lord allowed me to see this, I went into reading word and reading the word and praise and worship. So you have the head of many, many snakes coming out of one head. So the one head is giving all the snakes their marching orders. What is this? These are seducing spirits. See, there we go. It's the spirits thing. There's an entity that represents this that is female in nature, and you can look it up, but I think it was in Clash of the Titans. I think the Titans, that is about to come back around into play again, because some of the things are coming full circle here. And so I had wrote at the time that this has not only to do with the riots, but the political plots. What does this have to do with the Titans? And seducing the people of God to come into agreement with these vortices, or vortexes, I guess, of destruction the enemy has released, seducing. So back then, almost 3 years ago, I'm using that seducing spirits, seducing the people of God. Now, to seduce doesn't always mean it has to do with, sort of, illicit nature. Girl, just say sex. Or to know somebody in the biblical sense. I don't know. It means alluring, to put bondage, put in bondage and destroy. Didn't you just say it doesn't have to be illicit and you're talking about bondage again? I know what she means. That's what seduce means. So people can be seduced by alcohol, seduced by money, seduced by drugs. People can be. So it doesn't always have to do with this illicit nature that we see in Hollywood films, although that does happen and that there is present, that is there. I feel like sometimes when you listen to them talk and just the way like their tempo goes, it kind of makes sense. But when you see it written and you just kind of read it plainly, I don't know, it feels like we lose some of it. I used to listen to Glenn back in the day. I remember him making fun of a CNN anchor's wife for doing crystal healing. A Mormon makes fun of someone for using crystals. Yeah, the other one is like blood sacrifice. Like, oh, they believe in killing animals. Like, did you read your Bible? Snakes can't march. They have no legs. God cursed them to that effect. Maybe these are the pre-Eden snakes. These are the primordial serpent, world of forms, coming full circle. I don't know. Coming full serpent. Holy warring angels are conspiring with snakes. Please donate. Yeah, exactly. It's almost word salad. Exactly. Word salad, mental gymnastics. This is any good, fit Christian's diet. There it is. No one is seduced by drugs. You just got real with what you really wanted. I don't think, seduction. I wouldn't call it seduction, So we see it, which say this is a part 2 of what I did with Samson and Delilah when I started talking and warning an illicit nature to it. So that does happen, but also it is not totally subject to that when we're talking about seducing spirits. Galatians 3 verse 1 says, "Ah, foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you?" That's what they want you to do. They want to bewitch you. They want to alloy you, bewitch you, deceive you, put you in bondage, and destroy you. Now, I'm going to give you from the Word of God, a mental picture here in a way. So Acts chapter 28, verses 3 through 6, "But when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks, just in time for Pride Month, and laid them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened itself on his hand. And when the native, the creature hanging from his hand." It says hand. "They began to save one another. Undoubtedly, this man is a murderer, and though he has been saved from the sea, ship crashed." What is justice has not allowed him to live, because remember, their ship crashed and they ended up on this island with the natives. However, he shook the creature off the fire. I'm sorry. Let's read this actually from where is it? So Acts 28, 3 through 6. Let's do that. So we're going to, my favorite site for this is Blue Letter Bible. And we're doing Acts, 23:6? "But when Paul perceived that one part were is that 28? That's why. Okay. Then they were escaped, and they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarous people shewed us no kindness. Let's just do this just to make it slightly easier for everybody, because I know we have international viewers. And then, we can do this. Great. Once safely on the shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and, as he put it on the pile, a viper, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on the hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from the hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer, for although he escaped the sea, the goddess Justice has not allowed him to live." But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead. But after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and said he was a god. There was an estate nearby. Okay, so they prayed, healed him, laying of hands, and everybody laid of hands, and then they thought Paul was awesome. Okay. That's a very different... Okay, so how's she rephrasing it? Because I mean, I would just say, yeah, Paul landed on this island, they were being nice, and then the viper came out and bit the guy in the hand. They were like, oh, he's being cursed. Obviously, he escaped justice, but she has prevailed, and then he didn't die, and they thought, wow, he's a god. And then he went to lay hands, and people were like, whoa, this dude totally can heal people. So she's saying, when the creature hanging from his hand, they begin to save one another. Undoubtedly, this man is a murderer. Maybe they meant say to one another. He has been saved from the sea. However, he shook the creature off into the fire. He didn't keep it on. He shook it off. What do you mean he didn't keep it on? It's like a tie. He shook it off into the fire and suffered no harm. But they were expecting that he was able to, that he was about to swell up or suddenly fall down dead, but after they waited a long time and had seen nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and began to say he's a god. Remember, you're dealing with probably a little polytheistic in nature, so they automatically thought he was a god because he survived this viper attack because he had the protection, anointing of God. Okay, but what does this have to do with what you're talking about? Let's get back into the seducing spirit. Yeah, because there's no... What seducing spirit was there? You know, and this is just like, oh, look, it mentioned it in the Bible that there's snakes, and I had a dream about snakes, and I'm a prophet now. Speaking of losing legs, I was just camping in the National Forest today, grabbed a salamander, and it ejected its tail. I didn't know they could do that. Otherwise, I would not have picked it up. It's, yeah, that's... But I mean, is it cool looking at least? Because we had to talk about that too for the class, like how they can eject their tails. Salads are good for you. This not so much. Yeah, exactly. Hello, Sage. Hello, Will. I wish I had my spiritualist church experiences on film. I would guess it looks a lot like a magic review. I would love for you to just share that if you could in the Discord. That would be really cool. Great to see you streaming. Great to have you here, Deep Drinks. Am I too late to catch up? Looks like I need to catch up the replay. You can, and then that's all right. We've only talked about half of what we planned. I want to be seduced by a spirit. Yeah, what kind of spirit though? Is it the spirit of lust? Is it the spirit of Goliath, the merman? So that's I think Sage is giving us a hint in how they're spelling high. This is something. And you know what? I think this kind of folds into what we wanted to talk about for narcissistic personality disorder. So I will make this available to you guys. So this is a drive. I've got like a bunch of stuff on my drive. So when I did like that video on conspiracy theory and conspiracy mindset, these are the things. So like check out the studies. Some of the studies you can find easily. Some of the studies you can only access through like an institution or a paid account. So, you know, these are for your reading, don't distribute them, that kind of thing. So narcissistic personality disorder. I took a couple notes on it, just a couple, but basically, there's a couple things to kind of differentiate here. So one is narcissistic personality disorder, and then there's narcissistic traits. And just because somebody has narcissistic traits does not mean that they have narcissistic personality disorder. It's also differentiated between self-esteem and narcissistic personality disorder or narcissism. One way that one of the articles wrote it was pretty interesting. They said that narcissism or self-esteem is the idea of like your own self-worth, how much you like yourself, that kind of thing. Narcissism is you wishing you had self-esteem, that kind of thing, like you acting as if you had self-esteem. So it is kind of interesting. Narcissism, I would say, to differentiate it from self-esteem is like your feeling about yourself. Am I a good person, a capable person, etc. Narcissism is more about entitlement, that I am the best, I am entitled to different things. And so that is where the difference is. Someone who has good self-esteem would say something like, oh, I did my best, but I didn't win, I got second place. That's okay, I still did my best, and I did a pretty good job. That's good self-esteem. But somebody who's narcissistic would say something like, it's rigged, there's no way I couldn't have won, I don't understand. People are trying to make me look bad, they're trying to make me look stupid, they're trying to make me look like a loser, I don't understand why I didn't win, maybe that person paid the judges or something, so they cannot accept it. In some cases, they get very upset to the point of violence when they don't get their way. And so these readings are sort of like, where does narcissism come from, as a trait? And there are different structures in the brain, so you can kind of see what you guys are looking at from the OBS studio. Yeah, so you can kind of see like this here with the prefrontal brain structure. So this is, if you guys are not, there's a couple ways to go through these. So if you guys are not really into sitting down and reading, I recommend two options. The first option is something called Speech. Let me find it. Speech Central. Speech Central is an app. Yeah, this thing. I use this all the time. So it's floating up here. This is what the logo looks like. Can't move the window. There it is. That's what the logo looks like. I have this as an app. It's great. So you basically open up something like this on your Google Drive, and then there's those three little dots next to it. You click on it and it gives you more options. One of them is open with, and then you choose Speech Central, and then you choose Listen Now, and then you can just listen to it. So this is what I tend to do. The other option, especially for those of you that don't have a lot of time and a lot of this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense to you, you want to scroll, first read the abstract. Sometimes it's listed as an abstract, sometimes it's just the beginning part and it's all bold or separated from the rest of it. This tells you, it's just a really quick rundown. The abstract is really helpful because sometimes you find a study and the title of the study might sound like something you need to read for your research or your paper that you're writing. And then once you read the abstract, you realize it's not what I'm looking for. So you can kind of put, you kind of go through here. The other option is to scroll down and to read the discussion, which also might be, that's usually discussion, but not results. Results have to discuss, well, let me use a different word. Results are explaining the numbers of what happened. So this is the actual experiment. The results explain the numbers and the data collected in the experiment. The discussion puts all of that into plain English, plainish English, okay? So they're basically saying that there is, visually, you can tell the difference in the brain. And there are different things we talk about. Narcissistic traits like subclinical. This means that it's not going to end your day, but you still do have these kinds of beliefs. But let's, I guess, take a step back. How many of you have heard of people being called narcissists, or you think you know a narcissist, or anything like that? And kind of take a step back. Dark Matter says, the spirit of lust, please. I think it's funny that alcoholic drinks are sometimes called spirits. Yes, definitely true. I picked up the tail. It was moving for a few minutes. It just wouldn't do it again. Yeah, no, I've never had a salamander do that. I've only had lizards do that. And yeah, just now as, you know, as an adult, right, we know that this takes a long time for that thing to grow back. Lots of resources are needed. Tom says that they have narcissistic traits, and recommend gardening for narcissists because nature is humbling. Oh, that's interesting. All for me, none for thee. That's true. And also the rules are for thee, not for me. Even non-denominational broadly falls within Protestant. That's true. That's true. fMRIs are amazing. We can see not just the structure, but the function. That's true. And yeah, some are like we mentioned, definitely you can have the traits without having the disorder, you know. 2 people said Trump at the same time. Trump is British slang for fart. Okay, well that's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean there've been people that have analyzed Trump, and again, we can't like diagnose anybody, but we can say, okay, well this behavior is in line with like narcissistic traits, but it's not necessarily saying, oh, I'm diagnosing this person, right? So I'm just gonna check my notes real quick while you guys are doing your thing, sharing your thoughts. There were a couple of them that I wanted to, yeah, Nadansh, where's that at? All right, it's Nenadish, I think, is how to pronounce it. This is Nenadish, yes. Okay, so, I wanted to start with the questions they asked, so this might give you like an idea. So there are questions that are used for narcissistic traits, and they basically ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and so you have to talk about how you feel. And in this case, you know, it is important because with narcissists, you feel a certain way, right? So you want to see how you feel. So we're looking for things like, these are pretty small, sorry. Alternative accounts of 4-factor, blah, 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 blah. All right, so there's power, exhibitionism, and special person. So these are some of the questions, sample questions that are offered. So authority, do you feel like you have authority or you should have authority? So one of the questions would be something like, I am a born leader. Entitlement, I insist upon the respect that is due me. Exhibitionism, modesty doesn't become me. Exploitativeness, I can make anybody believe anything I want them to. Self-sufficiency, I rarely depend on anyone else to get things done. Superiority, I think I'm a special person. Vanity, I like to look at myself in the mirror. So maybe some of these kind of, you feel like, oh, this kind of fits me. And remember that this is where the problem comes in. When people are looking at just like these little bits and saying, if I fit one, then I'm, you know, this person that I know must have this disorder or this personality problem or something. And that's not the case. So for example, I rarely depend on anybody else to get things done because I don't trust that other people will do it just based on the past. I also feel like if something is assigned to me, then it's my responsibility to do it. If I bring something that's heavy and I'm hurting and I have a migraine, asking my friend to carry my heavy bag, I don't do that because I don't feel like it's their job to. It's my fault. Like, I brought this heavy thing. Why should they be saddled with my bad choice? You know what I mean? So this can apply to different people, right? So there's two types of narcissism that we tend to look at, and then there's these subtypes, whatever. But the two types we really care about are grandiose, which is I'm the best and I don't understand why nobody recognizes I'm the best, and vulnerable, which is kind of more in the background and just really they just don't care. A lot of the vulnerable narcissists will also come across as really self-deprecating in order to get your attention and approval and your compliments and all of this other stuff. A good example would be a coworker I had who exhibited these traits. He would really use my time a lot because he thought that I was. He also had like a crush on me, which is very inappropriate. And really without warrant, because I kept telling him very directly, I have no respect for you. You shouldn't be here, and I hope you get fired because you're just screwing with the students' GPA. That's all you're doing. He thought that the best way to do things was to get the students to like him. That was his whole goal. He didn't want to look stupid in front of the students. So one thing the students found a pattern was when they would ask a question he couldn't answer, he would suddenly need to go to the bathroom for a minute. So he would go Google it and come back, and then magically he had the answer. Very ridiculous, right? But he didn't want to look stupid in front of the students. That's a narcissistic trait. For me, if a student asks me a question, and I will say, I'm not sure, let's look it up. So here's how I would look it up with these Google search terms. And all right, well, we look it up, we got to avoid like Quora. Sometimes, okay, they can start there. It might be good, especially if they provide a link to a source, but we want to look at the source, you know. So I explain how to Google correctly, right? But a narcissist, this is unacceptable. He would also put a lot of really inappropriate stress on the students. Stuff like saying that if they don't like him, that means that they're going to say mean things on the teacher's evaluation, and they're going to get him fired, and they're going to ruin his life, and oh, what can I do to get you guys to like me, you know, and blah, just ridiculous. He had a very hard time explaining concepts, and anytime he did, he would use himself as an example, and I don't mean an example from his life. Because sometimes that'll happen where we'll talk about, I don't know, depression or something in the class. And I'll say, well, you know, so right now, like, here's some feelings that I'm having because it's around that time of the year or about my sister's death anniversary. And these are some of the feelings that I feel and some of the lack of interest in stuff. And so whatever, you know. That's one thing. But for him, he would describe like an atom and like the nucleus. And he would say, imagine me, but really tiny. And then there's a lot of really tiny me's rotating around me. And I'm like, how does that help them visualize anything? He's like, oh, because I'm using myself as an example. Who are you? What are you doing? Like, what? He didn't think to draw it. He didn't think to show him a video. He didn't think to liken it to the sun and the planets going around or something, you know what I mean? That could have been some, you know, at least the Bohr's model, right? He had no interest in teaching. He just wanted the students to really like him. That was his goal, was for the students to like him. And if a student didn't like him, he got very upset. He would try to get the counselors to force the student to stay after school to spend time with him. Literally, this is what he would try to do. He wanted to be brought into conversations, but he didn't know how, so he would just stand really close to people, hoping that we would notice him and bring him into the conversation. He felt very entitled to behave a certain way, and when he found somebody that he was powerful over, which was rare for him, he harassed the hell out of her. Just the hell out of her. It was horrible. She was so scared of him. It was horrible because he felt like physically he could dominate her physically, and that was his thing. Like, he would corner her, he would do all this, and she was terrified of him, absolutely terrified of him. but he felt entitled. And so when I kept repeating, I remember I told him all year that I have zero respect for him, and I used very strong language, obviously not in front of the students, but very strong language, because I thought he was an unqualified POS that didn't belong there, and his main goal was the students to like him, not to teach. Get out of here, And he spent his time trying to find information about some of the teachers on the internet so he could use it against them, as opposed to trying to do his work. It was really weird. Eventually, he realized I didn't like him. This took him months. And he said, "Did the other teacher say something to you? What did she say to drive a wedge between us?" And I was like, "There was no us, and if there was, the wedge was you." But he could not comprehend that that he was the problem. He just couldn't get it at all. He thought the students were trying to be mean to him. He thought the staff was trying to be mean to him. He thought I was secretly in love with him, but outwardly trying to be mean to him. It was really weird. It was just so weird because he was so pathetic and so narcissistic. So that's a vulnerable narcissist. Has anybody met somebody like that? Because these are a lot harder to spot. And I'm not talking like a person who uses tears to manipulate you. That's different. I'm talking somebody who's got no self-esteem because they believe that the rest of the world doesn't recognize how amazing they are. It's so bizarre. It's such a, because you feel like these are like polar opposites, but how do they exist together? So that's like vulnerable, an example of what it could look like. So let's see what you guys are saying here. My ex-husband is a diagnosed narcissist with NPD. I wish I had understood what that meant before staying years longer. Oh, for sure. It's ironic. Trump means fake or to made up a charge. That's true. See you later, Menno. Yeah, I prefer to be self-sufficient. I totally get it. Dude was like, playing hard to get, I see. Yeah, and then the bathroom Google. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. The weirdest behavior was, there's so many, but I think probably out of everything, the weirdest behavior was when he blew up. Like, he lost it and started just screaming in front of students. And he was screaming at me, but it was in front of students. Everybody heard it. It was very frightening because physically he wasn't really tall necessarily. Maybe my height, I'm 5'7", about 170 centimeters. He was a little bit taller than me, but he was really, really just fat. So physically, he had a lot of weight to throw around, And so he was just losing his mind, just screaming. And he didn't want to deal with this the next day. So he first was like hovering because I did not want to see him. I didn't want to. I didn't want to, because I didn't know what he was going to do. And while I wasn't afraid for my safety, because I was in the damn Marines, who wants to get into a fight at work? You know what I mean? Especially when I come to work looking so fancy and fabulous. Do I really want to throw hands? I will, but do I want to? No. Who wants to? I'm here to teach. I'm not here to have to get interviewed by police. You know what I mean? Especially as a foreigner with a military background. It is not a kind thing, So I was just avoiding him. I was in the office because I knew he was too scared to walk into the office. We could all see him through the frosted window because he kept trying to look in. It was really weird. So he realized eventually he wasn't going to talk to anybody. And this was still during COVID. So what he did, and the thing is, we have security cameras in all the classrooms. That's just normal for Korea. So everybody, you just see this. He took, I need a prop. All right. So he took his hot coffee. He rubbed it all over his face. And then he ran down to get his temperature checked. And of course it was warmer and it was slightly over the thing, right? And so he's like, "Oh, I guess that means I have to go to the hospital now to get checked for COVID, huh?" And the guy who had no authority is like, "Well, go check in with the office," but he didn't. So he runs to his classroom, grabs his stuff. He just didn't have first period, so he runs and grabs his stuff, runs away, runs away, like runs away. And then as he's passing the temperature checker person, who's not like admin, and he's not a teacher, so he had no authority to release him. He grabbed the guy's hands and he said, "Please pray for me." And of course, the guy doesn't know what's going on. He thinks maybe this guy could have COVID, and now he's grabbing my hands and getting in my face. And so he's like, okay, you know. But again, that's the kind of narcissist thing, right? Give me this attention, show me that you care, and all this other stuff. The boss sends this letter, like, don't come until it's after a certain time period, right? And so he sends a letter back that doesn't respond to it at all. It's about, "Thank you guys for caring about me. I had a very high fever, and I appreciate that the staff is so concerned with my health, and that this and that. But instead of coming at the time you want me to come, can I come at my time because some reason that didn't make sense?" So it was, totally ignored what happened, rewrote in his mind why the staff was contacting him, that they loved him and they were worried and that were deeply concerned. And then, for good measure, "Your time doesn't work for me. Let me set it for an hour later." What? It's just so bizarre. So bizarre. Oh, so bizarre. Yeah. Throw hands. I like that phrase. Yeah, I think that's what I say. Did I say Marines? I did say Marines. That's right. United States Marine Corps. 1371, combat engineer. Which, interestingly, I've used a lot as a teacher. Let's see. Boy, you're going to carry that weight a long time. Yeah. Wait, so you didn't get along with this professor? It wasn't a professor. It was a fellow teacher. It was like a coworker. So you want everyone to learn how to play the piano. Imagine every key is me, and the music is me, and the piano pedals are me. Exactly. It was horrible. It's exactly right. I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome recently. I have had medical providers ask what it is and Google it. That's awesome. One can't know everything, but yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Power dynamic obsessed people are not fun to be around. Exactly. Sounds like 50% of the people here in Portland, and I will talk about why. That's the fun thing I learned, because when the person asked me to go over this, that's the fun thing I got to learn. I met people with similar traits, but they weren't professors. Yeah, this guy, it was weird. I asked him, I said, who, because he used to be like some other job. And I asked him, who told you that this would be a good career choice for you? Like, who lied to you? And he said, "Oh, the people at my other job." And I said, did they really tell you that you'd be a good teacher? Or did they tell you that you're so bad at your job that maybe you could use your degree for something like teaching? Which was it? And he's like, "Oh, no, they thought I would be a good teacher." Okay. I think that was my face. Okay. Because you know that the other one was the truth. Nobody wants to work with you. You can't do your damn job. It looks like you fell asleep during the entire everything ever that you've ever had for training, education, whatever. I don't know, maybe you can use your degree to teach or something. I would put money on that's how it was phrased. Let's see. I've known a few people like that. Yeah, you have, okay. Because for me, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I've met a lot, I've met more grandiose narcissists, and it might be because I've had a lot of experience with two. And so perhaps that's the reason it's just easier for me to notice it. Whereas this one vulnerable narcissist, again, assuming that this is all what I can't diagnose him, right? This was just out of left field. It took me a few months. It took me a few months before I realized, oh, this guy's like, he's got all these narcissistic traits. You didn't think so at first because he seemed so self-deprecating, but no, actually, no. And I remember I asked him one time, because I pointed it out to him. I said, I think you have a lot of like narcissistic traits. Like, I don't think you're, like, you probably think you're a pretty nice guy, right? And he's like, yeah. I said, you're not. Nobody thinks that. Nobody. You know, I was just very, I never minced words with him. Never. And I said, yeah, you're not. Like, people don't like you. Don't you feel that? Don't you get that? And he said, no, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a really nice person. And I said, let me ask you this question. What are my hobbies? We've talked. We've shared a wall. Like, we're neighbors for teaching. We've talked almost every day for I don't know, a few months. What are one of my hobbies? He's like, I don't know. I said, have you ever started off a conversation with, hey Lee, how was your weekend? Hey, how you doing today? Oh, I heard you were feeling bad yesterday. How you feeling today? Have you ever started off a conversation like that? No, it's you bursting into my room. Like, he would burst into my room. That's the only way to describe it. Only way. The door would fly open and he's just there. He just bursts. I've only ever seen that in like cartoons. It's ridiculous. And then he would say like, what do I do if a student blah, 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 blah. Oh, do you think that this thing, da, 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 da. Oh, the boss said this to me. Do you think that blah, blah, blah. He would only ever talk to me if he needed something. And he needed reassurance. That was the thing he needed. Never help, reassurance. And so, you know, it kind of made him pause for a second, like, oh, that's not nice. Yeah, that's not nice. That's not what nice people do, you know. I know how old you are. I know you still live with your parents. Like, I know that you talk to friends, but you prefer to talk to them on the phone. Like, I know at least that much about you, you know, like that. You don't know anything about me because you don't care, which again, it's fine. You don't have to care, you know. Let's see. People try to influence their own perception of themselves. They do, but I think a lot of times it's a little bit more natural. You know what I mean? Or subtle, something. You know, like there's so you guys know I'm very interested in religion, to include things like the occult and those kinds of things, just as a hobby, right? So I saw a student from another school. I had to do this thing, so I was a student, and they were wearing like an evil eye necklace. And as they walked by, I said, "Oh, I like your evil eye necklace." You know, something like that is that's kind of a way to like, oh, okay, you have some interest in this kind of stuff. Oh, you have some interest in this kind of stuff, right? So I feel like it's a lot more subtle than that, as opposed to like when he found out that I was interested in this stuff, and he said so was he, and that it was a sign from God that we are destined to be together. Because what are the odds that two people that have an interest that's pretty kind of common would have to be right next to each other? But he thought that God had put me in his life for him to marry. That's what he believed. Which is why that was something that he told me that maybe the first day I met him. And that was why I never minced words with him, because I did not want him to think this was at all a possibility. Absolutely messed up. Sage, what was your MOS? Dark matter. The best thing about throwing hands is that it could also be a slap fight. Yeah, I guess. The Navy. Well, you know how we feel about each other. People stopped saying I'm all that in a bag of chips. Yeah, they did. I don't know. Throw hands. I don't know. Did he suffer from psychopathy? I can't say. I can't say. I don't think he had any antisocial traits. other than that physical aggression, but that physical aggression was more tied to the fact that he felt entitled to that woman. It wasn't like he was being antisocial. You know what I mean? Did you actually tell him he should be fired on multiple occasions in no uncertain terms? I told him, and again, I used very strong language. I said it was stuff like, I hope they fire you. Do you realize that you're ruining your students' GPA? These are high schoolers, and because you're so interested in talking about yourself and not doing your job, you are failing them. You are dooming them to fail and do very poorly. Some of them are trying to take the AP exam for your class, and they had to hire tutors to do that because you're doing such a bad job. Like, don't you feel any shame at all at how abysmally horrible of a job you're doing? You're not a teacher. You're not even a textbook reader. You are just a thing that exists that shouldn't. Like, that's what I told him, that kind of stuff. Just all the time. Just all the time. And he still thought I secretly loved him. Bursting through the door like Kramer. Yes. That was it. It was frightening because he would do it when I had class. He would just do it. He didn't care. It was just whenever he felt like he needed to get my reassurance. That's all it was. Like, oh, I'm worried that students, oh, I'm worried that my PowerPoint, oh, I'm worried. The PowerPoint he downloaded from the internet, by the way. He never made his own stuff. I told him how to fix it. He never fixed it. And he would just burst into my room. And I just remember at one point, because, again, we're wearing masks. And one of the students, because you try to have a certain face that you present to the students so they don't think that the teachers hate each other. And I just remember that he flies into the classroom and he says something, and he looked like there was a serious emergency. And I was like, is there a fire or something? And he said, no. Is this something that we have to address right this second? Like, is a student missing? Oh, no. And I looked at my students, and I looked at him, and he's like, oh, maybe I should come back later when you don't have class. And I said, And he left, and he shut the door, and I just kind of like, I wasn't looking at the students, but I turned kind of that way, like away from the door, and I just went. And then one of the students started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? She's like, teacher, your face. And I said, oh, is that obvious? And then, just, like I said, imagine that just with a mask. And she still could pick up, that I... And she's like, teacher, me too. Okay, all right, well, I know, you and everybody else. Aviation admin support, New River Air Station. We had New River. Where was that? I know we had Cherry Point. That was the aviation nearby us. Havelock and Cherry Point. That was maybe your West Coast. Cherry dress, not a sign from God. I had to change the cherries because the lemons I had, that blended into the green screen. So that's the reason they're cherries. I'm not defending this teacher, but wouldn't telling him you should be fired get you in trouble? In which way? In which way? Like, it was... I mean, it's not like I said it in front of the students. It was just his incredible incompetence. I can't even, like, he couldn't even, he was teaching something he was not qualified to teach at all. When a student, like, when he would assign something out of the book, and the book has some answers, like in the teacher's version of it, so he would write the answers on the board, and if a student got a different answer on their homework, and they said, teacher, how did you get that answer? he would say, who got the right answer? And so one student raises their hand. He would take that student's homework and copy their steps to get to the right answer. He did not know how to do this at all. He was destroying the students' GPAs. We had straight A students going into his class and failing. He was destroying their GPA. And these were students that they're gearing up to like write college entrance letters. You know what I mean? Like they needed to do very well in this class, and they were doing so poorly that a bunch of them, like more, it was about a third of the students had to get tutors so they could pass this class. That's how much he was doing, because all he would do, he would talk about himself. And then when he just wanted the students to like him, he just started showing movies. That's it. Unrelated movies. Totally unrelated. Stuff like The Devil Wears Prada. Just unrelated to anything. Because he wanted the students to enjoy his class. When we had these masks, this was COVID, we had hard law. Again, we've got the cameras and stuff. If students are not wearing their masks, teachers are not wearing their masks, like we could get shut down, like, or really fined or something by the health department. And he was telling the students, it's okay to take off your mask in my class, but don't tell Ms. Lee, because she hates me and she'll try to get me in trouble. But you guys can take off your mask if it's more comfortable for you. And he would take off his mask too. Like he should not have been around students at all. At all. Of course I brought this up to the administration, you know, of course. So this wasn't like some hidden conversation that we were having. Of course I brought this up to the administration. Of course other people brought this up to the administration. Of course parents called and brought this up to the administration. Like this was no secret. This wasn't like behind closed doors. I told him this, but then I was pretending that everything was okay, and oh yeah, we're besties, and oh, I think he's a great teacher. It was very overt. Like they knew how I felt about this guy. Oh, for sure. I'm of the opinion, like if you are too ashamed to say it in public, you shouldn't say it in private. So yeah, the admin knew I was telling him this. Absolutely. Their thing was, don't waste your time talking to him. You know, don't waste your time trying to help him. Don't waste your time trying to talk to him. That was their thing. That they thought I was wasting my time. Let's see. Vulnerable narcissism sounds like the concept of a psychic vampires. Okay, I like that. I like that analogy. That was a very secret crush you didn't even know. Lejeune. Yeah. No, yeah, that water. Me and my, yeah, I had to get tumors and stuff removed. So I keep getting tested gotta go get tested again. Cause that damn water, man, that damn water. Shouldn't a teacher's main goal be to teach? Yes, his main goal was to get his students to admire and respect him. That was his goal. And I guess that kind of sums up the narcissist, you know what I mean? Boiler technician. I think my stepdad did the same job. Boiler technician. He did his full 20, I think. Some of it was reserve. I don't know, but he like retired, which is that's pretty cool. Oh, amphibious ships. We had Marines on board. I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm sorry for you. Did he use my students if students did well and our students if his students did badly? No. No, his fear was that the students were telling on him to me, because he was there for half a second and I was there forever. The students absolutely trusted me. And I kept telling him, like, I have no power. You know, you can vent to me, which is not, you know, that's okay. Like if you feel like he's immediately doing something that should be reported and you're kind of scared to talk to admin, like I can report it on your behalf, but otherwise you should be taking this to the administration, because I have no say. So this is where, you know, some of the students, again, that were scared to speak to the admin just for whatever reason, you know, they told me so I could tell administration. Otherwise, yeah, they stopped talking to me about it and went to tell admin once I explained I don't have the power to do anything about this guy. Yeah. How long ago was it when you worked with this teacher? What ended up happening to him? This was I don't know. Like I said, it was during the beginning of COVID, so maybe 3 years ago. Yeah, it must have been because we started COVID at this time. And he ended up absolutely losing his mind. Just lost his how to phrase it. He started screaming really loud in front of students, and so loud that like they could all, like, down the hallway, like everybody could hear it. He started screaming. The students were scared of him. One of the teachers was scared of him, especially after that outburst. And he was fired. So that's what happened. Because there's a time, like, sometimes, you're kind of waiting until you find another replacement. You're kind of waiting until you fire somebody. And that's kind of where I think that might have been their idea, possibly, that they were waiting. But once this happened, they couldn't keep him on campus because he was so threatening to the students and to the teachers. He was so threatening. They kicked him out. They just kicked him out. This was in addition to, like, sexual harassment, sexual comments, all this other stuff that he was making to the adults. So this kind of all happened right around the same time that it came out. And then he got fired. Was this his first year of teaching? Yes, it was. Apparently he got another job. I don't know, but definitely not with our any of our recommendation, you know what I mean? Okay, I wasn't at NAS Meridian. I'm glad the base was good though. I've been away, but you still teaching in Korea? I am, yes. Hello, Hiram. It's been quite some time. Thank the unnamed deity that you're okay, and no one's ending up in hell or any kind of eternal damnation for not believing there's any kind of God. That's a horrible thing to say. Well, Hiram, thank you for such a nice super chat and a nice way to jump in and say hi. Thank you. That was a very sweet thing. Yeah, that was his first year of teaching, but based on his explanation of what he did before, this was, he just wasn't good at his job. That was the thing. So his idea was that he wanted, because he told me his plan for teaching, and his plan, he thought that as you become a teacher, you, like, rank up, and your ultimate goal is to be a college professor. Like you start in a lower grade, and then each year you're supposed to go up a grade until you finally become a college professor, which is absolutely not how teaching works. But he thought that, and he wanted that because he believed that would get him the respect. Excuse me, the respect that he felt that he was entitled to. Yeah, he was just really bad at his other job, based on his own account. He was really bad at his other job, and nobody liked him. He just did a really bad job, and his other job was like, if you mess up, like, this is serious. People could be harmed. There's a lot of money lost, like, if he made a mistake. And he was just really bad. He said none of his coworkers liked him. He's just not, but the type of job that he had before, this is a job that kind of brings with it respect. When you tell people that you had that position, then they're like, oh, okay, you're educated, you're probably making some good money, that kind of thing. Yeah. No, it was not his last year of teaching. As far as I understand, I think he got a job at another school. Yeah, but a different profession, like a warehouse worker, but that's the problem with the narcissist. He feels like he's entitled to a lot of, assuming he had narcissistic personality disorder. He feels he's entitled to a certain, like too much respect, and then he doesn't get it. I mean, if somebody says, "Oh, I work in a warehouse," nobody. I mean, yeah, it's a necessary and good job, absolutely. You get paid well for certain types of things you do, absolutely. It's a good job, but socially, that's not a job when people say, "Oh, a warehouse worker. Okay, yeah, that sounds really good. Wow, I really respect that work." Nobody says that. And that's really why he chose certain jobs, was for the respect, not because he has a natural aptitude for them. So that's probably a big problem with him. So one person said it was 50% of Portland. Yeah. So our good friend Google Plus, there seems to be a continuing rise in the entitlement. Yeah, and so this is where I thought this was really interesting. Where, let me pull up. Sorry, I've got I get confused with my windows open. All right, this is this one. Okay, origins of narcissism in children. All right, and again, if you are interested in it, this is some good findings where you want to kind of start with this discussion. So what they had thought, because there's there's different schools of thought within psychology. Some of them are like it's totally biological. Some of them have to do with evolutionary biology and so on and so forth. So they wanted to kind of test one new idea and then one idea based on a current model that had a hypothesis already. So there was one hypothesis already in existence that they were testing, and another totally new hypothesis. So, how did I break this down? Just real quick. Okay, so there's NPD. We talked about that, narcissistic personality disorder. This is the thing that you're going to find with the brain scan. This is like genetically, you got it. You're predisposed to it. And that's what we have to remember about mental illness. Two people can go through a situation that's traumatic, and one person can eventually tolerate it without any additional help. They just kind of accept this happened, and I'm alive, and I gotta move on. Where other people develop post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And so these are where the genetic component comes in. Is your brain ready to have that? So I kind of describe it as like your brain or the genetics is a chest, like a treasure chest, and then the environmental thing is a key that opens it up. So if you have the key but you don't have the chest, there's nothing to unlock. There's no mental illness to unlock. If you have the chest but there's no environmental factor to open it up, then it's just sort of a dormant mental illness, right? So you need both. And so with NPD, this is like the genetic. You're born with it, and you're you're going to be able to see it on a brain scan. The narcissistic traits, these are things you can pick up. These might indicate that you have the propensity to develop NPD later, but it's also like you can just learn this behavior, and so you can unlearn this behavior. It's one of the differences between something like antisocial personality disorder and sociopathy. Sociopathy typically is a learned behavior, so you can correct it, quote unquote, with a lot of work. Whereas something like antisocial personality disorder, the only real way to get them to not behave aggressively is to remind them, well, you don't want to be stuck in prison all the time. Like that's it. So you can't convince them to care about people, so you have to convince them to care about themselves. That's it. So these narcissistic traits, these are the things that we're finding happening more and more and more in Western youth. And when we talk about Western, we're not just talking about the United States. Somebody mentioned Portland. I'm assuming Portland, Oregon, USA. Somebody who lives in Alaska mentioned this as well. And this study was done in Amsterdam. So we're talking like, what we might identify as Western culture. This is happening more and more. So basically, there's, we talked about self-esteem versus narcissism. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Narcissism is what you feel like you're entitled to. Like I feel entitled to some quiet. For you, Coconut. Coconut's making too much noise. Um, and so even children that have cold parents, parents that don't feed into their self-esteem, these are parents that, or these are children that can still develop narcissistic personality disorder. And that was one of the things they wanted to test. One of the theory or the hypotheses was that because your parents don't give you love and admiration, you go to seek it from other people, which would be a narcissistic trait, to make yourself seem like the center of attention, you're amazing, you're everything, whatever. So what they found out was really this connection was the parents' overvaluation of the child leads to narcissistic traits in the child. And I also put a note here that I wanted to read to you guys some of the comments or the questions that they asked. Glasses. All right. Okay, so they asked the children and they asked the parents. So this was really interesting. So let's see. Research from this age, narcissism can be assessed. All right, children are able to form the global evaluations of themselves as a person. So one of the questions was like, I believe I'm a special person. So that was one of the questions. Kids like me deserve something extra. Kids like me are happy with themselves as a person. My mother and father lets me know that he or she loves me. My child, and then they asked the parents similar questions. You know, my child is more special than other children. And then the parental warmth questions were asked too. I let my child know that I love him or her. So what they found out was more of a indicator. What was more related to a child developing narcissistic traits was the overvaluation. So even if you have a cold parent that doesn't say like, I love you and you're special, or I love you, and they like give you hugs and stuff, that you might still find, like if they go to the school, this is where I really get on this crap. They'll go to the school and argue on your behalf. So a really good example is we had a student who, the school, just for better or for worse, it's got certain rules, and one of the rules is about dyeing your hair a different color. I'm very against this rule personally. I think that teenagers should experiment with their hair. I think it's, you know, but the parents expect a certain decorum, and if they show up on campus to look at this school to see if they want to send their kid there, and then there's a kid with like green hair, that disrupts what they expect, and so they think this is not a good school because it doesn't look like the other schools that I'm expecting to see. So that's the reason. It's to keep up with appearances. And again, I'm very against this, but it is what it is. So we had a student that dyed their hair, I don't know, some bright red color, and they got in trouble for it, and they didn't care. They just kept coming to school, just doing whatever they wanted, skipping class, coming to school late, skipping homeroom, just, you know, whatever they wanted to do. And eventually they said, listen, you know, we gave you enough time to change your hair back. This has always been against the rules. You knew it was against the rules. It's in the student handbook against the rules. You're not allowed back on campus until you do this, because the student was influencing other students just by having this hair color. Other students had started to like bleach their hair, and they got in trouble. And they said, but I saw this like older student who had their hair done. I thought it was okay. And so they were a negative influence to the other students to break the rules, right? Again, I disagree with this rule. So the student got in trouble for this. They were off campus for whatever. And then this was at the end of the year. So to start the next school year, they come back on campus and their hair is just whatever. It's the same thing. So they get detention immediately. They cried. They ran home. This student was a legal adult at this point. So just to give you the age that we're talking about, ran home, and then the father, I don't know if the father came on campus or called, but screamed at us for not warning his daughter. How dare we give detention? Who do we think we are? And just so on and so forth. And so this kind of things, even if this parent doesn't show warmth, like giving her hugs and telling her that I love you, when she hears this, like, Daddy, the school did this to me, and he says, well, let me fix it because this is not right. I don't care what the rule is. You are exception for whatever reason, and then starts turning this into a thing. This is when she learns I am exceptional.
And a lot of her behaviors were like that, as I'm exceptional, I'm this, I'm that. So this is where they learn this. So for somebody like her, and there's no way to know unless you do a brain scan, right? But for somebody like her, if the parents had not done this, she probably would not have developed this sense of entitlement. This is why the sense of entitlement as a narcissistic trait, but not narcissistic personality disorder, but as a narcissistic trait. Coconut, please. Thank you. It seems to be more common because the parenting style overall in the West and in Korea, overall the parenting style has drastically changed. This is the reason. And so the parenting style has an influence. Now, this doesn't mean we should go back to, let me take a step back. So culture tends to do this, right? It goes back and forth. I always explain that to my history students, and I tell them if you can't remember anything else from this class, if you remember no kings and no timelines and no anything, just learn that every part of human culture cycles. That we will go from a point where we're extremely conservative and traditional, and then we're extremely progressive and liberal, and then we start swinging back and forth, just constantly. We're going to have a candidate who becomes president who's really, really liberal, and that's what we want. And then the next person we get is going to be really, really conservative, and that's what we want. And then we're going to get tired of that, and the next person is going to be really liberal. We just keep doing this over and over again. And this is what happens with the parenting as well. So you come back from World War II, you've got PTSD, but it's not being treated. You're abusive, you're an alcoholic, your wife is frustrated, she was at work, she was making her own money, now she's confined to the house, and all she cares about is just having a life that isn't super, wanting to make her end her life, right? And so her husband beats the child. You're acting this way, you're doing this thing, and they're physically beating the child. They're berating the child. They're having a hard time with this kid. The mom doesn't really step in. She's scared she's going to get beat up. She just wants to make everything hunky-dory, just pretend everything's fine. And so this kid now is beaten by his father, and he's not shown appropriate love from his mother and a protection from his mother. And then this goes into the free love, free drugs, tune in and drop out, hippie culture, right? And then these people try to raise kids. And they start to say, well, I don't want to be like my parents. They're just a bunch of jobless hippies. So they go way too into work. They try too hard to get into school. They're way into work. And this is when we get the 80s kind of latchkey kids. They're really just not interested in interacting with their kids because they're trying so hard to make a good foundation for their kids to do well in school and to do well with work. And so they have to do well with work so their kids can do better with work. They have to make money so their kids can have better chances at going to school. But they're really not like loving parents. They'll show up to school if you do something wrong, but they won't show up to school because you had like a band recital or something, And we're not saying everybody, we're just talking very gross generalizations. And so now, people my age that were raised that way, this is more like, oh, well, we should kind of consider that maybe all the kids aren't bad. Maybe some of them have ADHD. Maybe some of them have autism. Maybe some of them have this. Maybe some of them have this. And everything's okay and every expression's okay. And we should just love our kids and whatever. This generation, so I'm at the end of Gen X. So this generation, we're the ones giving out participation trophies. And then other people in my generation are also saying that, oh, look what happens when we give out participation trophies. And they're insulting those teenagers for growing up with participation trophies as if our generation isn't the one that gave it out because we wanted to feel like our kids were special. That's the thing. We didn't feel special because our parents didn't make us feel special. When we didn't get first place, all we got was, well, that's why I don't show up to your stuff. You're not good enough for me to attend your events. That's what we got, right? So we want our kids to feel like, yeah, you're doing a great job, and it's okay that you didn't get first place. You tried and you had fun, and that's really what matters. We're trying to express that experience, and good experiences matter. Good social interaction matters. We love you no matter what, because our parents didn't. This is what we're doing to our kids. And in this case, we're also turning them into, you're more special than other kids. with some parents, this is where it becomes the problem. You see what I'm saying? So I'm interested in how those teenagers now, when they're my age, how are they going to be raising teenagers? I feel like it's going to be a little more rough. It's going to be a little more, well, you want a car? Get a job. Go buy a car, So there's there's four, but three types of main parenting, which is like really permissive, which is what this generation is doing to their kids. The opposite of that, the one that like comes from the 1940s where you're getting beaten because you open the door too loud, this is authoritarian. This is like you're too controlled. These are both negative. So one of them, you're not being taught how to think critically. You're not being taught the importance of functioning in society. You're taught that everything you do is great. Don't have to worry about what other people think, which is a bad thing. Because yeah, I should enjoy dressing like this because I feel like it, and I shouldn't worry that other people in Korea don't dress like this. If it makes me happy, who cares? That's different. But for me to act in a way that is totally entitled, such as, oh, well, the light's about to turn red, but I didn't get to drive, so I'm gonna go drive into the middle of the intersection, and everybody else, well, I don't care if I'm stopping traffic. I don't care. This is for me. I deserve this. That's when we should care about what other people think, because that's disrupting society. This sort of middle ground is so there's authoritarian and there's authoritative. This is when you allow a child to grow in their own way, but you provide guidance as needed, and you have an interaction with your kid that is to provide support, not to always give praise and not to always punish. So if a kid does something like they break a window, they should feel comfortable telling you, Mom, Dad, I broke a window, and you should have some kind of way to teach them why this is necessary. So, okay, well, are you hurt? No. What were you doing? Could we predict that this behavior, this action could have caused this kind of thing? Yes. Okay, so why did you still do it? And so you kind of go through it, and then as the punishment, it's something like, all right, well, we assess the window. It's going to cost $300 to fix. So for $300 worth of things that you want, you are going to be denied that. And you keep a running tally. So if you're at the grocery store and they say, oh, Mom, I want this chocolate bar. And you say, well, how much is the chocolate bar? Oh, it's $2. Great. $2 removed from your total. You don't get the chocolate bar. And then you go through, oh, Mom, it's my birthday coming up. And I really want this thing. And I want this thing. And I want this bike. Well, how much is the bike? $150. All right, $150 removed from your total, you don't get the bike. To show them, because they don't have money yet, you have to show them this has a value to it, and this is why you should care. This will affect you negatively, but you don't need to hit them on top of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if I break a window and somebody hits me for breaking their window, I get to call the cops and they go to jail for assault. Like that is not a normal response. And we're supposed to be teaching kids to grow up, right? So that's, I thought that was like a necessary thing to explain. Like the opposite of this is not to hate your child. Yeah. All right. So, see what we're saying in the chat. Origin of narcissism in children. Charlie the Chocolate Factory said it best. If the kid is a brat, look no further than the parents. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Paul. Thanks for dropping by. Nurture versus nature. It's both. That's the thing. You need the genetic component and you need the environmental component. When we're talking about environmental component, we're not necessarily talking about an event, like a traumatic event. These can be small events that add up. This tends to be something that leads, like unlocks an eating disorder, for example. So think about like a video game where you got to collect components to create a key, and then the key can open the chest. It's like that. In other cases, puberty is the environmental unlocker for something like schizophrenia. This is why usually schizophrenia starts to show itself during the teenage years. So it's really unusual, but possible, but really unusual to see schizophrenia in children, like little kids. Self-reported survey, the results are probably exaggerated. Even better if it's narcissistic, which is why, again, you take in multiple concepts. You can't just ask one thing. So with the other one with the this self-reported survey with the kids was with the parents and the kids. So this is when we care not about what the kid thinks and what the parent thinks, but usually we care about, do they match? And then in other cases, when we're asking about parent-children dynamics, we care about when they're different. So if it's something like, my mom or dad yells at me for no reason, and the child says, highly agree. And then I yell at my kids sometimes for no reason, and the parent says, disagree. Why are they different? And this is when we have that discussion. And that's the purpose of these surveys. It's not to say your feelings create your reality, or that your feelings alone are enough to diagnose a situation or diagnose a disorder, but it's that we need to know why these feelings don't match up, that kind of thing. So this is how sometimes surveys are used. Near the beginning of Gen X, okay. Isn't National Defense Medal a participation trophy? Yes. Yes, it is. Yep. And I think that's kind of how we always showed it, like when, or that was another way to tell who was faking it. Like some people just like they would put random medals to just fake being in the military, but the National Defense Medal wasn't on there, and that person's like around your age, so they totally should have the National Defense Medal. And you're like, oh, Purple Heart, huh? You're like, yeah, I got hit and blown up in Afghanistan. Man, that's rough. That's rough. Where's your National Defense Medal? It's like you didn't even have the participation trophy, you know? Yeah, teachers aren't allowed to put their hands on anyone. Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't, like when I was hit as a child, I was told, this hurts me more than it hurts you, number one. And so I eventually started saying, well, then why are you doing it? I'm in pain, you're in pain. What's the point? And then the other thing was, you'll understand when you're older. And now that I'm older, and it's even when I had the most annoying kindergartners, and a kindergartner that really did show early signs antisocial personality disorder. This was a child that caused injury to other children and touched them inappropriately. And then anytime even his parents would say, why would you do that? He's your friend. He just went like this. And his mom would like get lower, like down on his level, but she was physically lower than him, looking up to him. And she would say, sweetie, you know, why would you hurt your friend like that? And he would look down on her. 5 years old. 5 years old. So even a kid like that, where you think, yeah, smack this little kid up, you know, I never had a desire to hit a child, ever. So this idea of corporal punishment, I think it's just, you cannot control yourself as an adult. You know what I mean? It begins in 7 minutes. Well, it begins in 2 minutes now. Uh-oh. That's all right. They said I can jump in a little late, though. Let's see. Hi, Summer. I remember you. Hope you're well. Let's see. Not sure when it was phased out. My daughter was almost 28. It's a distant memory for the school. Yeah. We call it the Broom Pushers Award. Oh, definitely. I don't think you had. Yeah, I don't. When did the National Defense Medal come in? I think this was after 9/11. I think that's when they did it, because now you're defending the nation against terrorists or something. That's why I said when you find a person who's your own age. So I have a National Defense Medal. You, looking around my age, did not serve, you know, way before this. Like when the National Defense Medal, the year it was, like the year before it was instated, you must have been in middle school, you know, or in high school, that kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of thing. These guys, they just try to get it. All right, well, I think we did cover what I wanted to cover for the absolutely Nutter Butters snake lady. and also NPD. But do you guys have questions about NPD or narcissistic traits? Or I've seen this. Is this a narcissistic trait? What's the cure for this or anything like that? Since we have you, and then I'll be jumping in to the other. You enlisted at 17. I only knew one 17-year-old, and he kept asking people to buy him alcohol, and nobody would because he's 17. And I'm like, nobody can buy you cigarettes, man. He's like, all right. And I saw him because sometimes, we're not allowed to drink at the barracks, but we did. So usually it was chug half a Gatorade, fill it with a clear alcohol. So you'd walk around with your Gatorade. So he was doing this as well, but it was with a Pepsi, but it was like purple. And I was just, what are you doing with this purple Pepsi? Come on, what's in there? And he said, oh, it's Pepsi. What? He's saying, yeah. I think he wants to see you guys. Come on. So he's like, oh, it's Pepsi. And I said, why is it purple? He's like, oh, it's the Pepsi whatever. I forget the berry, I think it was. The Pepsi berry. There he is. Hello. Oh, he's so big. Oh, he's so big. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would not drink alcohol. It's illegal for him. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. So this is Chaco. This is son of Krampus. Chaco from Krampus' son. All right, sweetie. Anyway, so he had made his own alcohol in his room and strained it with a sock because nobody would buy it for him. And I was like, is it good? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm gonna try it. Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it tasted mostly like juice, I think he just felt better drinking it, So, yeah, the Gatorade. The worst one though was this guy. Jeez, I think I don't remember what happened to him. He totally got dropped from MOS school. He was like in the military you drink. So for me to say he was a raging alcoholic, that's bad. He would replace his Gatorade. He'd fill it with Everclear. For those of you guys that don't know what Everclear is, it's like 99% alcohol. It was horrible. Yeah. Born in December 24th, man. I left and I missed Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. That was a fun one. Yeah. Let's see. Could your teacher friend, thank you, eventually realize he's the source of his own problems and get counseling or something? That is a good question. It's really difficult for narcissists to do that because they don't think they're the problem. He's claimed to have seen a counselor for 2 years, and he said that they said nothing was wrong with him. And I said, clearly something is wrong with you. What are you talking? Like anybody even the students know, after they've spoken to you for 5 minutes, everybody knows there's something wrong with you. Like it's obvious. What are you talking about? You saw a therapist for 2 years and nothing. And so he kept trying to get me to meet him on Saturdays to pay me to be his psychologist. And this was before I was even studying psychology. And even now I would still say no. Like it's so inappropriate, and I need a weekend too. Like I don't want to spend time with you anyway. I don't want to spend more time with you. But for younger people, it can. So there was a student that I used to have, and the student was really like very characteristic, grandiose narcissist. Occasionally the student would say stuff like, can you believe how cute I am? Don't you think? And then like take out a mirror. Who could be this cute? And just admire themselves. They genuinely believed they were the smartest kid in the school, even though their grades did not support this. They didn't understand why they didn't have friends. And so whenever somebody would kind of challenge an idea, like most of the students that they saw as stupid, most of those students finished an in-class assignment. But this student was unable to finish an in-class assignment, so their grade would be hurt. The student would start thrashing, threatening. like really specific threats that I don't want to repeat. Very violent and aggressive. Um, uh, just really awful behavior. That ended in a couple suspensions. From the students' perspective, they were very sweet, kind, innocuous, and just lovable. Just like, doesn't everybody just, don't they just love me? And just, it was just randomly they would just say this stuff. And again, similar to the coworker, they would only engage you if they wanted to talk at you about something so they could look smart. Like they were really interested in this like one current event. So they would kind of walk into your room or just walk up to you out of nowhere and just say, so, and just talk about this thing, and then they'd walk away. They didn't care. They wouldn't ever say hello. They wouldn't ever ask you how your day's going. They wouldn't wait for a response. Sometimes you're trying to actually respond to them about the topic, and they would just walk off. Like they just didn't care. They just wanted you to know they're up to date at this current event. Look how smart I am. That was it. They just didn't care. I even gave an example where there was a teacher this student didn't like, and I was trying to give an example of empathy, that, you know, even if that teacher got into a car accident and was in the hospital, I would be worried and possibly visit the teacher, at least send them a text message saying, hey, I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything. But you would hope they died because they mildly inconvenience you by not allowing you to break the rules. And the student said, yeah. And they didn't see that was bad, because that's how important they are. That it's better for another human being to suffer and die than it is for me to follow the rules and not be slightly inconvenienced when a teacher enforces the rules. That's what they really said. Like, they said this. And the way that kind of worked to try to communicate with them was to basically get them to care because of themselves. So, you know, there's nothing I can do as a teacher, right? I can't deep dive into their psyche, right? But I've had another student too who was much less this, but caused a lot of problems. And they just didn't see why they should care that they caused a bunch of problems in their friend group on purpose. Like, they were lying about friend A to friend B and then saying, you know, isn't this person so terrible and blah, blah, blah. And then friend B would agree because they thought the lie was true. And so then they would go back to friend A and say, oh, friend B said this bad thing about you. Isn't this person such a whatever? And then friend A would say, yeah, I agree. Oh, friend A called you whatever, you know, isn't that? So they would do this, and then they caused this huge problem. It turned into a big thing, and I had to mediate. And it turned out they just didn't care. They just didn't see why they should care. And I said, well, I mean, you want to have friends, right? And the student was like, well, yeah. So, okay, well, if you keep doing this, by the next semester, you will have no friends. And anytime somebody talks about you, it will be negatively. They're going to say, oh, so-and-so, yeah, don't be their friend because blah, 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 blah. And then not only will everybody hate you and not be your friend, but they will talk negatively about you in the same way you've talked negatively about other people, except they'll be right. Is this what you want? Is this how you want to finish out your high school? And they said, no. I said, great. Stop it. Knock it off. Okay. All right. And I told them, like, there's, number one, don't lie. And number two, even if it's true, if it's not your information to share, do not share it. If somebody confides something in you about anything that is not your information to now share with other people, keep it to yourself. The end. And it stopped. So, you know, with that student, that was the only way to, the other student, the one that was more extreme, that was really the way to try to communicate with them, was that you want people to perceive you as this sweet, quirky, cutesy, whatever. you are doing the exact opposite of that. You should at least care. You should at least learn enough about other people, even if you can't feel empathy. You should at least learn enough about other people in order to understand how you're coming across, so you can adjust your behavior, so you can present yourself in the way that you want people to receive you. And that's really the only way that I've found to try to deal with this. It's to help them kind of realize that. And this is based off of things when, like, narcissists and antisocial personality disorder people, that they have a court order to see a doctor about their condition. It's mostly about convincing them to stay out of jail. It's not about convincing them to care. It's convincing them to stay out of jail. And that's, what can you do? What can you do? It's just they have a fundamental inability to care about other people. And yeah, maybe that could be fixed or something in the future, but for me, as a teacher, with my limited interaction, no. And I've yelled at their parents. Like, not yelled at them, but spoken very sternly. One of the parents had come in and said, "Oh, thank you so much for working with my kid," and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, cool. What are you doing at home? And the excitement from their face just fell. Because, yeah, I'm doing what I can. What are you doing? What are you doing to stop this? What are you doing to raise a proper child, you know? So that's, yeah, no. Hiram says, the 26-year-old I grinded, I'm carrying a standard handcuff key in a wooden bench in a courtroom, using the actual handcuff key to grind it. I look back on it in embarrassment, even though I wasn't caught. That sounds like an interesting story. We used to jokingly say I was born that way every time someone complimented us. But I mean, it's true though, right? Like, I didn't grow my eyes. I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. I missed your jokes test. I was told no cure, just symptom management, more or less. And that's where the current situation is, not only for NPD, but for pretty much everything. Do you think your relationship with him would change if he decided to change his ways? I don't think that, like, hypothetically, right? The problem with, like, narcissists that I've encountered is they're not interesting people. They're just not. They don't have a lot of hobbies. They don't have a lot of anything. If they do have a hobby, they're not very good at it. They just think they are. And that's it. You know, so I don't think this person would be, like, an interesting person to hang out with. They really seem like a malformed adult. They seem very immature. It would be like asking if this 10-year-old boy was able to not be so rude to adults, would you be his friend? No, he's still a 10-year-old boy. It would still be inappropriate for me to be friends with somebody like that. But even if it wasn't inappropriate with that age difference, like if it was a nephew or something, I still wouldn't choose to spend a lot of time with somebody like that, because we just don't have anything in common. They don't have any interests or anything that overlap with mine. Their ability to think things through it's just not there. So I can't say that I would be friends with him. I would say it would be more tolerable to work with somebody like that, but someone more receptive to learning. But then again, that's not my job. My job is to teach students. My job isn't to teach a teacher how to teach. You know what I mean? So it just seems like, again, it would just be like a 10-year-old showing up. Yeah, we never want to reward bad behavior in parents either. That's the hard one. I think if you ask most teachers, or a lot of teachers, the hardest part of the job is dealing with the parents, for sure. High school students are a tough bunch. I'm glad I never had to teach middle school or high school. Although I'm a youth leader for middle school kids, I'm lucky I haven't had any trouble. I love teaching high school. I love it. I really love it. I love teaching high school because they're at that age where they're really questioning things, but they're not at an age where they're set in their ways. Because I've taught little kids, and they can't delve deeply. Like, you could explain concepts simply, but that's all you can do. They can understand it, but they usually can't ask a lot of really in-depth follow-up questions. One of my nieces can, and I'm really amazed with her. Like, I love just talking, like, teaching her. Like, I love doing that. Because she's just really curious about everything. She's really able to connect ideas. Well, wait a minute, we talked about this and this before. Could that apply to this? I mean, she's really, like, I think, yeah, definitely like a researcher or something in the future, like, for her. But most kids just don't think that way. And, it doesn't make good discussion. I like to have good discussion, especially as a social studies teacher. But when you teach adults, they're so set in their ways. They become really pissed off. I remember talking about, just our lesson was on superstitions. That was just the prescribed lesson where I was working. So today's lesson is superstitions. So we were talking about the difference between things like Western superstitions versus Korean superstitions, some of the background to it, because, I'm always interested in history anyway. And we talked about fan death. And that's where this belief that if I turn on a fan in a room, then the fan will, and I shut the doors, I shut the windows, then the fan will somehow destroy the air in the room, you suffocate and die. And that's just a South Korean superstition. Most of the students, they know that's not true. Most people my age, they know it's not true. But a little bit older people, and rural people especially, they still believe it. So as we were talking about this, we had an older adult, maybe 55, and he got really mad that I brought this up. And he said, it's absolutely true. And he's like, well, if you think it's not true, then you go do it. Which was kind of like telling me to go kill myself. Very mature. And I said, well, I have. So have most people around the world, because nobody wants to leave the window open because it lets the aircon out or it lets mosquitoes in. So yeah, a lot of people close the, like, and he just kept insisting. And I just said, okay, well, through which mechanism? And he said, well, it makes your body too cold. And I explained, like, how it doesn't, and how you can have the fan on you and still be hot. That means you're not nearly cold enough to die from hypothermia. That you can't breathe with the fan on. Told him, yes, you can. And he just wouldn't stop. And so eventually I had to say, well, we're in a really small, because we were in a really small room. And the door's shut. And we've had a fan on for almost an hour. And none of us are struggling to breathe. And I just, gave him that look, like, just blank. And the other people who were, like, in their 20s, they were just, like, trying not to laugh. And I said, so when do we have to wait? Like, and he got up and left. Like, he never came back after that. This was the same guy that tried to insist that a baby dies from suffocation, not from heat, if you leave a baby in a car, because the baby's body can regulate, like, they have the power to regulate their body temperature enough so they don't die from the heat. And I was like, they can't even regulate against honey. What are you talking about? And I tried to bring up, like, you ever been driving, the windows are up and your aircon's off and your heater's off, but then you smell something like cow manure coming into your car? It's because the car is not airtight. Like, these are not airtight things. And he just would not accept it. And I was just thinking, man, I don't want to teach this. I don't want to teach this age group. They're really set in their ways. Some of them are racist, and they're really set in their ways. It's just really frustrating to teach them. Really frustrating. So yeah, I dig teaching teenagers. Oh, your second cousin Amanda taught in grade. Well, how was that for her? Let's see, I had a friend with many of those traits. Yeah, the best thing about NPD that I can recommend is to understand it, so you can understand that whatever this person is putting on you is not your fault. You're not a bad person, and get away as soon as you can. You can't help that somebody is this way, and in a way you can kind of feel sorry for them. That doesn't mean that you have to be their friend, their lover, their loving child. It doesn't mean that. It just means you acknowledge this sucks and you don't deserve it. That's kind of the take-home message. Aren't you worried about somebody Aren't you worried about helping someone be better equipped to manipulate people? I helped teach many people about sales and leadership, and one person took that scams selling water frustration. He's already run away from 2 places to start new lawsuits. In my case, when we're talking specifically about these people, they're hurting people right now. They're manipulating and hurting people. So if I explain to them that the manipulation, stop that, and then people will not be hurt by you, therefore they'll like you. This sort of teaches them that they can stop behaving in a way that they're inclined to behave, and if they do that, people will like them. Now if they make a connection to the manipulation aspect of it, that's one thing. But I do bring it up because the one who may show those sociopathic traits, the one that like stirred the pot, that's different. But the one that I'm talking about that had the really, like, if I could say grandiose narcissism, I would say grandiose narcissism, because remember, we can't diagnose the people here. That person I keep pointing out because they'll cry, and it's very self-pitying but also manipulative, and I tell them, stop crying, you're doing this to manipulate people, everybody knows, knock it off. And I don't give them any of that benefit. I tell them, well, why are you crying? Well, because I feel bad. Well, how is crying going to solve this? It's not. Knock it off. So I know this person is using tears to manipulate, and I point out, and I try to make it seem like everybody knows you're manipulating them. You're not as slick as you think you are, so that way it hopefully will discourage that behavior in the future. Yeah, it's sort of a case-by-case basis. We can get rid of bad students or people by rewarding their bad behavior. Yeah, and that would be an example of it. They're crying to manipulate. You do not reward it with any, oh, let me get you a tissue. I'm so sorry you're crying. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that. But to point out, nobody asked you to do this. Knock it off. As an educator, what do you think about corporation moving to a less college-educated workforce? I think it depends on which corporation and what job. But I think that our education should really be focused on doing well in elementary, middle, and high school in order to produce people who can think, not who memorized facts. That's why I told my students, I don't care what you remember from this class in terms of memorizing names, dates, and times, time eras. I care about, can you remember the concept that things swing a certain way and make reasonable predictions about what will happen if you vote a certain way. That's what I care about. If you threaten self-harm, you'll end up in involuntary psych commitment. I would not want that in my worst enemy. Yeah, and that might be something to bring up too. Babies have horrible heat regulation. Yeah, they do. But this guy is just, he just, you couldn't talk to him. Yeah. Hey, Orge. Sadly, she came home from a tour and she died. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that, Sage. On that note, I'm going to be unfashionably late to the other event. So if you guys want to join us over there, it is through Discord. And we will be, let me get you guys a link for that. Here we go. Okay, so we'll be doing that. I'll be jumping in, and yeah, hope to see you over there. Thanks for joining me. All right. Also, we're at 15% of respondents saying that there's technology from the spiritual realm. Interesting. All right. Well, if you don't have any court order to take it, Hiram, then there's nothing legally you're doing wrong. But I hope that you can find something that helps for you. Yeah. The atheist channel scared you to death. I hope not. I hope not. Yeah, medical, engineer, dentistry. Oh, we definitely need college educated. Yeah, definitely. All right. I hope to see you guys over there. All right, bye-bye.